I'd like to welcome everyone to this meeting of the Council here in the Council Chamber. Can I ask everyone present not to talk amongst themselves during the meeting, as this can be very distracting for others who are listening to the debate. Can I also ask everyone to ensure mobile devices declare what your interest is, highlighting the item number and what type of interest it is, starting with Councillor Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's item 6E and it's an other interest as I'm a trustee of Burnley Leisure and Culture. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that prejudicial or non-prejudicial?
Non-prejudicial, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hurt. If you could put your hands up and then I'll ask you and as I go along the chamber. Councillor Councillor Whitaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's item 6D regarding selective licensing. Myself and my wife own a property which we rent to a family member.
Thank you. Is that prejudicial or not?
I'm not 100% certain, Mr. Mayor, so I'm just declaring that now. I will seek the advice of officers prior to this item actually being raised, if that would be in order with yourself, sir.
Did you get rent from it? That's the question. Do you receive a rent from it, Councillor Whitaker?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm not 100% certain, so I am just declaring it just so that everything is above board myself. As I say, I will seek advice off officers as to whether I should or should not remain in this chamber when that particular item comes up.
Right, okay. I think we're going to have issue with every single one of us here who've put their hand up. Because, no, the reason I'm saying is it might be in similar cases, Councillor Whitaker. So what I would suggest to officers is how do we go about? Do we go individually and ask those,
I think
or?
everybody has an individual different position in relation to it. I'll defer to Catherine here, but if the question we need from answering from Councillor Whitaker is, does he receive a rent for that? Do you receive a rent?
Yes, we do.
Yes, it is a pecuniary interest.
Okay. Thank you. And Councillor Baker.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, did it sat down then? Item 6D, selective licensing, a possible perceived pecuniary interest.
Thank you. Councillor Anwar.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Same item, item 6D. It's an other prejudicial interest.
Thank you. Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I own a second property. I think it's a pecuniary interest. I am not a landlord, but I may be in the future. I wanted to be transparent about that.
Thank you. Councillor Chowdhury. Is that peculiar or not peculiar? Okay, thank you. And Councillor Ishtiaq.
Yeah, I'm a landlord. I have a property which is on rent, so it's peculiar.
Peculiar interest. Thank you. Councillor Ali. Peculiar interest. Thank you. And on this, Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 6D again. I'm a landlord. I have a prejudicial interest. It's a pecuniary interest as well. So
Okay.
we'll be leaving the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 6E, as a member of Burnley Leisure Trust, it's a other non-prejudicial interest. Thank you.
Will that be
No, that's right.
right? Okay, thank you. Have you got noted all that? Yes. Yeah. Okay, so on those who've indicated agenda item 60, selective licensing, I would expect that all members will leave the room and take no part in the debate or decision. And those members who indicated an interest in agenda item 6E, Townley Park Master Plan, and that is Councillor Hurt and Councillor Lewis. And as trustees of Burnley Leisure, you may stay and speak and vote. Okay, and item number 3, Mayor's communication. The Civic Bowl will take place on Saturday, 23rd November at Burnley Football Club, arrival for 6:30 p.m. I extend a warm invitation to you all and would be grateful for any donations or auction or raffle prizes. And tickets and further information are available from Maureen Neve. Also, I know this is some way in the future, but the annual remembrance service and parade will be held on Sunday, 10th November, and further details will follow. I hope to see you all there. Item number 4, public question time.
None have been received, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item number 5 on the agenda, motions to the council. Once a motion has been moved and seconded, members may speak once and for a maximum of 5 minutes. They may only speak again on an amendment. Councillor Lubna Khan, will you please move the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to move my motion. I believe everybody's had chance to have a look at it. It's a very important motion. It's a humanitarian issue, but something that all of this country is well aware of, the unbelievable tragedy that unfolded before our eyes. I don't wish to stand here and read out the whole motion, but I do want to just highlight that we recognise that successive governments failed to protect the most vulnerable in one of the wealthiest areas of the UK. And this was highlighted in the recent report on the Grenfell tragedy. I want us to come together and support this motion. I would really like it if we did not play politics on this, given that it is such a big issue and that the tragedies that them families faced, they deserve better than us to make it into a political game. I did receive late this afternoon an amendment from Councillor Mark Townsend, and I believe it's seconded by Councillor Sue Graham. In the spirit of trying to come together across parties, across wards for the greater good, I'm happy to accept that amendment and would like to alter my motion to incorporate that, if that means that we can all unanimously agree on this and move forward. Thank you. I reserve the right to speak, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Councillor Lorna, will you second that motion?
I will second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
No, you need the consent of the meeting to
Okay.
accept the alteration.
Okay, so obviously there's been an amendment. There will be an alteration to it, and I need a consent of the meeting for that to happen. And if members agree, please say aye. Right, and so that's been confirmed. So can I ask, can I ask Councillor Lubna Khan to? We need to know what the amendment is, though. Is it circulated? Yeah, Councillor Whitaker.
I do apologise, Mr. Mayor. I've obviously read it. I believe the proposal was Councillor Lorna as opposed to Councillor Khan. Is it a typo? I just wanted to confirm that before we actually went to a vote on anything. That's all.
Okay, so before we go into the discussion on it, has everybody read the amendment to it? So everybody's aware. You've seen it now. Has everybody else seen it, or do you want the amendment to be heard? Okay, so it's been circulated. Right, so we'll take a debate on this. Any member on this amendment, on this motion, as amended? Yeah, I've got Councillor. Can I take Councillor Townsend and then Councillor McGowan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and can I thank Councillor Khan for accepting the amendment in the spirit in which it was offered, because it was certainly not about politics. It was about this really, really important issue where 72 people died, 70 people were injured, and 223 escaped, but were scarred by the events of that night. There's been a 6-year inquiry, 59 recommendations across 36 areas, many of those recommendations interlinked across those areas. And that's why it's important that we get this right, because it's been got wrong for so many years and so many decades. And by doing things in a potentially cack-handed way, we can end up going back through that cycle again. And what worried me about the motion as written in the first place was it did not reflect the recommendations of the report as it relates to building control. It does not say bring building control under local authority control. In fact, it says there should be a national authority because it has some, it recognises some shortcomings in local authorities in building control regarding professionalism and consistency. So it's important we get this right, and governments have been asked by the report to set up an independent panel to see how building control should operate in the future. And I think it would be premature of any council or any body to preempt what that independent panel might say, or government in responding to the recommendations. So that is what the reason why the amendment was put forward, just to bring it in line with the recommendations of the 6-year inquiry, which was exhaustive. And I don't know if there's any building control experts, and I mean experts within this borough, who wants to overrule a 6-year inquiry at this stage. I would suggest that would be unwise, and that was the reason for the amendment. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Councillor McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I also agree that the loss of life we saw at Grenfell is a tragedy. Should and could have been avoided. The regulations in place at the time were clearly not fit for purpose, and the result was the death of 72 innocent people, including children. For anybody, that's just heart-wrenching, especially as it was completely avoidable. I'm no expert in building control, so I wanted to seek a number of answers from what I thought was Councillor Lorna in proposing, but Councillor Khan, and also now Councillor Townsend in his amendment. I do know that the type of cladding used was what caused the disaster. Thankfully, we had confirmation that there were no buildings within our borough with that material on. However, I wanted to give those who put forward this motion the opportunity to answer just a number of questions I found myself asking when I first saw this motion on the agenda. Following the fire, the government commissioned both the Grenfell Tower Inquiry and a review of building regulations and fire safety. I believe it was called the Hackett Review. In response to this review and the Grenfell Tower Inquiry, the government introduced a new law, the Building Safety Act, 2 years ago. What it means is that to build or carry out building work on residential properties 18 or more metres high, or 7 stories high, developers need to obtain approval from a new independent body the government created called the Building Safety Regulator. This is what came out of the review into the Grenfell Tower fire in my understanding. For smaller buildings, developers need to obtain approval from the local authority, us, or a private building control professional called a Registered Building Control Approver. Both local authorities and the Building Safety Regulator have enforcement powers to require developers to fix non-compliant work, and they can also pursue prosecution against people who violate building regulations. So I guess my question boils down to the one which impacts residents in our borough, and it's around the regulator mentioned in the motion in point 1. If following the fire we now have a new independent regulator which can, alongside the council, check all work is safe, what extra measures are we actually proposing to send to government as a recommendation? And I'm genuinely open to listening to what's being said in this chamber. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any other member? No? Councillor Khan, as mover of the motion, you have the right to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor McGowan, for your question. It will come as no surprise to you that neither am I a building inspector, or neither do I have the knowledge that you're asking of me today. I think if you had come to me prior with this question, I could have looked into it, and you know that I'm more than happy to do that. I'm always working with any member in this council chamber, trying to get the result that we want. If your decision today is based on the fact that you need an answer to that, then I'm going to be very transparent and say I don't know exactly the answer to that, and that's the honest truth. But what I would suggest is that this is an overarching motion. So these details that you're asking of me are something that are quite, I would say it's for the specialists, for the people who actually know what to do. And I would even try to attempt to answer that. What I would ask is that everybody in this chamber, in the effort of thinking of people outside of our town, as well as if it was to ever happen within this town, would stand up for what is good and proper. And I would really appreciate everybody's support on it. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now take a vote on the motion. All those in favour of the motion, please show. Thank you. Councillor, just bear with me. Yeah. And You want us to vote again? Right, okay. Those all in favour of the motion, please raise your hands. Can you keep it up until and our esteemed councillor knows that they're all in favour? So we can count as well. Thank you very much. Those against the motion? Any abstention? Thank you. Item number 5. And this is the motion to advocate, sorry, item number 5B, to advocate for the retention of single-person council tax. Councillor Whitaker, will you please move the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be doing, but just before I do so, I just want to say that this motion is put forward in goodwill. I would hope that everybody within this chamber at this moment in time would take that into consideration and actually vote for it. We've had quite a tumultuous time over the last couple of months and people are in a lot of flux. They don't know where they're standing. There's a lot of reports at this moment in time in various news agencies, various platforms that this council tax, single person's council tax deduction could be removed. I would like clarity for residents in my ward, particularly a number of whom have approached me, and also for family members who are now living alone at home, that are already facing a situation that they didn't hope they or weren't expecting to find themselves in. So the motion is genuinely put forward. I'm not going to politicise this. I'm not going to be having to go at what anybody's been saying in the papers over the last couple of weeks. I just genuinely want clarity for residents here in Burnley and Padiham that we as a council are going to ask the government to take this on board and listen to our views. I would like to reserve the right to speak. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor McGowan, will you please second the motion?
Sorry, point of order. Councillor Whitaker has just spoke. He can't reserve a right to speak. Oh, right, a right of reply.
Councillor McGowan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I second the motion. For me, it's really concerning to see reports that the government is refusing to rule out scrapping single occupancy council tax discount. Having a 25% discount for those living alone isn't a nice little perk. It's an adjustment reflecting actual service use and waste production. That's why I hope that tonight the council can send a message to the government in the run-up to next month's budget that removing or reducing this discount would be deeply unfair. If it went ahead, it would mean imposing an additional financial burden on around 16,000 households in our area, amounting to hundreds of extra pounds a year in council tax bills. This motion is about urging the government to rethink on this one, and hopefully tonight Burnley Council will act with one voice. If passed, we intend to send a letter signed by all group leaders to our new MP and the relevant government department, a unified voice echoing the needs of our area and demanding the preservation of this discount and what is needed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any member on this motion? I have Councillor, oh, quite a few here. I have Councillor, I'll go from there. Councillor Gemma Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick one, really. The Guardian at the weekend, the Treasury has ruled out that this was ever a policy or that they would ever do it.
Thank you. Councillor Gail Barton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really disappointed to find that this item is still on the agenda, given the point that Councillor Haig has just made. It has been quite well publicised, as far as I can see this week, that this is not something that is being considered by the government at this moment in time. And I think we all need to be really careful about the ideas that we repeat in our communities, because what we have seen over recent years is that fake ideas take hold of our communities and they create havoc. This false rhetoric that gets repeated and twisted, and Chinese whispers means that people behave in ways that quite often can ruin their lives, as many of the protesters that came out after Southport are now finding happening to themselves. Now, I completely understand that people are concerned. The Labour government have said that difficult decisions will need to be made because of the situation that we are in. But since when did speculating about things that might not happen do anybody any good? Can I ask this council, please, can we stick to the facts of the matter? And please, can we bring items to discussion where we can actually make a difference for the residents of our lives in our communities? If this, at some point in the future, was ever put forward by the government, I certainly wouldn't vote for it, because you are correct, it is a regressive tax. It would disproportionately affect the people who most need the support. But let's wait until that is actually on the table before we start having those conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barton. Was it Councillor Lewis? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just really like to echo, it probably sound a bit like a broken record now, but yeah, it's a motion about something there's no plans about it. If there were plans out there, that publicised plans, I would have absolutely no issue with this being brought to council, but there's no plans to reduce, take away the single person discount for council tax by the government. So I'll be voting against it because it just shouldn't be there anyway. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Yeah, I'll just be very quick. Everybody's just said a lot of what I was going to say, but this isn't a chamber. It's better than this for basically discussing fake news, conspiracy theories, scare stories, and everything else that you might want to bring here. If it was a firm proposal, then absolutely fine, just like it was last time on the winter fuel payments. You know, genuine, it was a genuine government policy and it needed debating, it affected people in our town. But this, you could absolutely bring anything and say that the government's not ruled this in, out or the other. And I thought Councillor McGowan and Councillor Whitaker, after all the things they've been saying over the last few years, after working in the MP's office, had no better than to be bringing things like this. They're just wild stories from the Daily Mail. Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Hosker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Barnes makes a comment yet again. Last time, we heard one of your comments at last meeting, which were disgusting, by the way. And that was about fuel payments for the senior citizens, which you actually agreed with Keir Starmer, which everybody
Councillor
saw,
Hosker, can you please make the discussion on the motion itself
and
not on a motion that was
motion,
passed?
Mr. Mayor.
On the motion, please.
On the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
My colleague mentions it out of a concern. It has been mentioned at government. It has been mentioned a lot at news. So what Councillor McGowan's mentioned tonight is a concern.
Thank you, Councillor Hosker. Any other member? Councillor Anwar.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to pick up on a couple of points. I think, obviously, we've heard from Labour colleagues about the fact that this is not a policy that is going to appear within the budget. But I think if we're all honest with ourselves and in this chamber, that news only broke a couple of days ago, and I think Councillor Haig mentioned that it was something that was broke in the Guardian. But there were, whether it was rumours, but there were plans from the Labour group, government to actually enact this policy of taking away. And my question is that what we should be talking about here is that, and asking this question, is that why is it always the vulnerable? Why is it always vulnerable groups? Whether it's the pensioners that get hit with the winter fuel payments.
Councillor Anwar,
yeah.
we're discussing the issue on the
motion. This is related to that, Mr. Mayor. You know, it's always those groups that are hit with it. And the single occupancy, those residents would have been hit hard as a result of that. And you know, in terms of bringing these issues to this chamber, I understand that, you know, we need to bring issues that matter to our residents, where this would affect our residents, in my view. But also, we heard from Councillor Barton saying that she would have supported such a motion if it was a real policy. Well, what we actually saw last time in this chamber when the winter fuel payment, the motion came in, she voted against it. And also, we've actually seen the unions actually oppose that as well. So I will be supporting this motion because I think we need to make it absolutely clear that we represent the residents of Burnley to say that always hitting the most vulnerable residents, the most vulnerable groups, is not the right way to go about it. What they should be doing is hitting the billionaires. Why are they not hitting them and targeting them? Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And before we move on, we've got a really long agenda here, okay? And in terms of motions and other aspects, if people want to do a grandstand and make issues and refer to the government and whatever else, you know, please keep it to a minimum, because we want to get, you know, through this meeting as soon as possible. So if there's any issues that I feel is not really discussion here, I will say that from now on. Thank you. Any other member on this motion? Councillor Brindle.
Thank you, Chair. Whether what it outlines in this motion is true or otherwise, I would like to point out that Burnley Council has a discretionary power under the council tax regulations to be able to overrule any discretionary rule if this was abolished, if it ever happened.
Thank you,
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Whittaker, as the mover of the motion, you have a right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try and be succinct and concise. I fully appreciate where you're coming from with the comments that you made earlier. First of all, Councillor Anwar, thank you very much. I totally agree with what you've said. Councillor Barton, I'm very sorry that you have come across the way you have done. I don't think you've done yourself justice from the research that you obviously do carry out. You're quite knowledgeable. You do come across usually very well. This evening you've shown a very serious chink in your armour. This is something that they've said they're not going to do at this moment in time, but are they going to change their mind before the budget in October? Are they going to change their mind next week? Or are they going to change their mind the day of the budget? I don't know. You don't know. This motion is put forward, as I said, not as a political thing, and I'm very, very sad that you guys have taken that aspect on it, because I could have gone on and on about it. It was put forward in goodwill, trying to protect the people, the residents of our borough here in Burnley. We're not just talking about pensioners, we're talking about single people with disabilities. We're talking about people who act as carers. These people, no matter what you say about news and speculation, will not know until the actual budget is called. The motion is asking us tonight to write with our concerns, to ask them not to include it, not to take this single person's payment allowance reduction away from constituents, or residents rather, in our borough. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hope that I can get the majority of the support in the chamber to put this forward. And if it would be possible, I would actually like a named vote on it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. For a named vote to happen, people need to stand to agree with that. So it's sufficient for a name vote to happen. Please take a seat. Yeah, okay. For your attention, please. Attention. Thank you. Everybody, please be aware what's happening and where you're voting. In particular, Councillor Husker. We don't want to repeat. We'll ask the Chief Executive to carry out the name vote. Please listen carefully.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to read out the names of individual members. Please can you indicate whether or not you are for the motion, against the motion, or whether or not you're abstaining from it. So I'll start with Councillor Aurangzeb Ali, Councillor Afrasiab Anwar, Councillor Lee Ashworth, Councillor Howard Baker, Councillor Gail Barton, Councillor Gordon Birtwistle, Councillor Helen Bridges, Councillor Margaret Brindle, Councillor Joanne Broughton, Councillor Ashley Brown, Councillor Saeed Chowdhury, Councillor Barbara Dole, Councillor Ivor Emor, Councillor Sue Graham, Councillor Gemma Haig, Councillor Alex Hall, Councillor John Harbour, Councillor Bill Horrocks, Councillor Alan Hosker, Councillor Becky Hughes, Councillor Martin Hurt, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Shah Hussain,
Abstain.
Councillor Jacqueline Inkle, Councillor Mohammed Ishtiaq, Councillor Nusrat Kazmi, Councillor Saeeda Kazmi, Councillor Anne Kelly, Councillor Lubna Khan, Councillor Jack Lorna, Councillor Alan Lewis, Councillor Gordon Lishman, Councillor Margaret Lishman, Councillor Shirish Lawn, Councillor Jamie McGowan, Mr. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Paul Reynolds, Councillor Christine Solis, Councillor Mike Steele, Councillor Jeff Sumner, Councillor Mark Townsend, Councillor Andy Waddington, Councillor Don Whittaker, last but not least, Councillor Fiona Wilde. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a pleasure to move this motion this evening. When this motion was first written and submitted to the council, the situation was not as bad as it is now. We are now moving in the Middle East from Gaza, that's become a massive wasteland, where 2 million people are living under the threat of starvation and everything that goes with that, and depending on aid and living in tented villages. That in itself, Mr. Mayor, is bad enough. Thousands upon thousands, 50,000 plus, innocent men, women, children and babies have been killed. The majority of them have been killed by missile attacks fired from F-35 fighter jets 35,000 feet in the sky. They have no defense against anything like that. It has been brutal, brutal carnage. But this week, things have deteriorated. This week, the IDF have now decided to pick on a country, a democratic country, Lebanon, who have their own government, who can decide who and what is in their country. They have now decided to carry out the same scorched earth policy in Lebanon. On the television last week, there was a little girl, Isla, she was called, sat on her father's knee in a barber's shop, and they were blowing the hot air of a hairdryer into Isla's face. 4 years old. and her hair was blowing all over, and she was smiling. 30 seconds later, she was dead. She was taken out by a missile fired from an F-35 fighter. Now, we can't do anything about that. This is the brutality of what's going on in the Middle East. But the F-35 has parts made in this country. This week, at the Labour Party conference, the Prime Minister has suddenly had an attack of conscience where he has called for a ceasefire in this area. We in this chamber, or should I say, the majority of us in this chamber, have been calling for this for the last 12 months. 12 months that's gone worse and worse and worse. And our Defence Secretary, he must have had a real attack of conscience when he decided that he was going to cut back 10% of the licenses to sell military equipment to Israel. Military equipment that is being used to wipe out innocent children like Hala. People in their beds like other children. Mr. Mayor, this is outrage. We are culpable for some of the deaths of these innocent people. Now, the terrorists are at fault. I'm not saying anything about them. They shouldn't be doing what they're doing. I think that is equally as appalling. But we should not be, as a country, supplying arms to a country that can be used not only to take out the enemies of that country. I don't object to supplying them for defence, but they are being used to take out the innocence of these countries and turn these areas into wasteland. Mr. Mayor, I have a conscience. I have grandchildren. I wouldn't like to see my grandchildren being wiped out like some of these children in Gaza are being. They've done nothing wrong. That little girl did nothing wrong, sat on her father's knee in that barber shop. She was happy and smiling. She was the future. She's gone. She's been taken out with a missile fired from 35,000 feet in the air. And part of that missile was delivered by an F-35 fighter, where parts of that airplane are made in our constituency. Mr. Mayor, I hope that this council tonight vote for this motion and send a strong message to this government, particularly to Mr. Lammy. I hope this pricks his conscience a bit more, to stop the sales of military equipment to Israel. The 10% is, I agree the 10% is minimal for what is going on. The Americans are sending 90%. But at least it gives my conscience and the conscience of people in this room tonight to say we're doing our best to save these innocent people. I ask tonight that you all vote and support this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Birtwistle, so you did move your motion. You did move your motion. Yes, thank you. No, usually ends with I move my motion. Thank you. And Councillor Lone, will you please second that motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I second the motion that the United Kingdom must immediately cease all arms sales to Israel. This motion is not about policy. It is about our moral obligation as a nation that prides itself on upholding human rights, international law, and the pursuit of peace. The ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine has been one of the most enduring and tragic crises of our time. It is a conflict that has claimed countless lives, displaced millions, and perpetuated a cycle of violence that shows no sign of abating. In the midst of all this, the role of the arms sales cannot be ignored. The weapons we sell are not just instruments of defence, they are tools that have in many instances been used to inflict harm on civilians, to demolish homes, and to perpetuate a cycle of destruction and fear. As a nation, we must ask ourselves, what message are we sending when we continue to supply arms to a conflict zone where there is ample evidence that these weapons are being used in ways that violate international law. The United Nations and numerous human rights organisations have documented instances where arms supplied by the UK and other countries have been used in operations that may constitute war crimes. This is not the legacy we want to leave behind. By continuing these arms sales, we risk being complicit in the violence. We are not just passive observers, we are enablers. We must take a stand and say enough is enough. Our commitment to human rights and the rule of law must come before any economic or political interests. Moreover, ending arms sales to Israel would send a powerful message to the international community. It would demonstrate that the UK is serious about its commitments to peace and justice. It would also show that we are willing to take the difficult but necessary steps to promote a lasting and just resolution to the conflict. In seconding this motion, I call on all of us today to consider the human cost of our current policies. It is time for the UK to stand on the right side of history, to prioritise peace over profit and to take meaningful action that aligns with our values. Ending arms sales to Israel is not just a policy decision, it is a moral imperative. Please can I also ask we ask for a named vote? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lon. And before we get to the name vote, is there any members who want to speak on this motion? Right, can you put your hands up? So I've got Gemma Haig. Councillor Haig, and if the other members keep on hand up so I can write your name down. Councillor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whilst I completely understand the sentiment of this motion, and I don't think there's anything wrong with us as a council stating our position on things like this, I do feel like this motion sort of, at the minute, ultimately shouts a bit into the wind. The government has called for a ceasefire in Gaza and a release of hostages, yet again in the Prime Minister's speech yesterday, and yes, he did eventually say hostages for those on the other side of the chamber. The government has to work within certain processes, and a fresh review was taken of arms sales in July, and the legal advice given to the government was that 30 licences out of the 350 might be used to violate international humanitarian law. Nobody in this chamber wants to see British-made arms being used for that purpose, but the licences were for things such as components for fighter jets that Councillor Birtwistle was talking about, and targeting equipment and drones. The remaining licences are for trainer aircrafts, naval equipment, telecoms and data equipment. If the government had evidence or legal advice that suggested these were also being used to breach international law, or could be, they would suspend the licences. The government cannot put out a blanket arms embargo that would be upheld in a legal challenge without that evidence. Ultimately, Israel still has the right to defend itself against Hamas, Hezbollah, whatever else. But if there is evidence or legal advice to the contrary moving forward, I'm sure the government would act. We're already much further on in this issue than we were before the election. The right moves are being made, and I fully support the call for a ceasefire, the release of hostages, a two-state solution, and eventual recognition of a Palestinian state. But for the reasons that the government doesn't have the legal basis to do this, I can't support a motion calling for an arms embargo without evidence to back it up legally, and especially whilst aerospace is a huge employer for us in our constituency. Yes, the arms are being made here, but how many people are paying the bills? Thank you.
Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank Councillor Birtwistle and Councillor Lone for bringing this motion to Council. I fully appreciate the spirit of the motion, and it is a really important issue, and I don't for 1 minute deny that. And the acts that are going on in the Middle East are absolutely horrendous. Again, the only issues that I am having with the motion as it stands, similar to Councillor Haig's, but not entirely the same. So again, in terms of calling on the government to advocate a ceasefire, they do, and they have been advocating that from the point of before the election, before they were elected. Two-state solution, they've always been advocating for considerable length of time. And in terms of the arms sales, in terms of that percentage of arms sales that got taken away, the licenses that got taken away, yes, those were based on legal reasons. If we were to start to say, right, we can't sell, we've got a complete arms embargo to Israel, Then you've got to say, well, on what basis is that done? Did it require a change in the law for the reasons that you want those licenses revoked? And therefore that's going to affect sales to other nations for whatever reason. You can't just single out one nation because you don't like what's currently going on in that nation, because there's lots of nations that are, let's face it, not, you know, exactly morally where we would like them to be. So on that basis, I will be abstaining. In terms of the actual percentage as well of sales to Israel, even before those licenses were revoked, the arms sales from the UK to Israel counted as less than 1% of Israel's arms imports. So even before those licenses were revoked, what the UK was selling to Israel was a drop in the ocean.
Can you please quiet so we can hear the member?
So as I stated at the start, I do fully appreciate the sentiment of the motion, but I'm not supporting it on those grounds, but I'm not going to vote against it. I'm going to abstain. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Graham and then Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also have a little bit of difficulty with some aspects of the motion. I certainly agree with the ceasefire. I mean, this has been Labour policy since well before the election, the call for a ceasefire. And in fact, Keir Starmer was speaking at the United Nations today and called for a ceasefire there. Also, the Labour Party has supported the two-state solution and recognises the existence of the state of Palestine, if it were to exist. However, the issue that I have some concerns about, and it would be good for me if the motion was split into 3 bits and we got to choose which bits to vote on. The bit about arms sales, as Councillor Lewis has already said, it's less than 1% of the total amount of arms that are going into Israel. I'm guessing, I don't know the facts, but I'm guessing that most of them come from the United States. I'd be happier if we said stop arms sales to Saudi Arabia so that they can stop obliterating the Muslims in Yemen. However, that's not part of the motion. So I will support, because we already do support, the immediate ceasefire and the release of hostages. And I will support the recognition of the State of Israel and the two-state solution. But I do have some difficulty about the arms sales bit. Thank you.
Thank
you, Mr. Mayor.
I've got Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very aware that obviously there's been a lot of speakers, so I'll try to keep it brief. When Councillor Birtwistle was speaking earlier, he used very emotive language. And I think when people use emotive language, it comes from a place of passion. He's obviously passionate about this. Some of the members that have spoken tonight, although there's a lot of love between myself and them, their words that are used, which were used in previous motions, that sort of give you a bit of leeway to say, well, actually, I understand the spirit of it. I understand where it's coming from, and I really like the idea, but... And it's the word "but" that is the problem. We just heard very eloquently Councillor Graham speaking about, you know, other atrocities. Yemen was mentioned. Kashmir has been mentioned in this chamber. Palestine's been mentioned. So actually, can we all agree that if we see something that is a tragedy, something that is wrong, can we call it wrong? Can we make it make sense? Arms being sold that are used to kill children are not Hezbollah. They are not militant groups. They are not terrorists. They are children. That is the bottom line. This motion is saying, please will you listen to Burnley residents. I speak to the women of peace. I speak to people from building bridges. They use things like, they say words such as, when I'm speaking to somebody about my concerns about Palestine, I see them roll their eyes. I hear people sighing and huffing and puffing this again. This is what people think of the councillors that represent them. They think that of the government. Let us not be them people. If we see something as wrong, let's call it wrong. And you know what? For 1 second, I'm not imagining that Keir Starmer is going to be listening to Little Ubna from Burnley. However, I want it on record for my conscience and for everybody in Burnley that I said, no, actually, this does not stand for me. And I agree wholeheartedly with this motion. And, you know, genuinely, everybody in this chamber tonight has gone, yeah, we agree with it. End of problem then. If you agree with it, you agree with it. Thank you.
Councillor Anwar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points that have been made, and heard Councillor Haig say that she'd like to see evidence. The evidence is that Gaza's been turned to rubble. The evidence is tens of thousands of people that have lost their lives. And often we get certain members who stand up and speak up about women and children. What about Palestinian women and children? Why is nobody speaking for them? And for 12 months, we've been speaking about that there is a major, major risk that if a ceasefire is not called, that this could escalate into a regional all-out war in the Middle East. And now we're on the brink of that. And I was actually saddened when the first attacks on Lebanon with the walkie-talkies and the radios, and actually saw a tweet from a member who sits in this chamber. I'm just going to read it out to you. How the F do you get it that pages explode? Like, that is top-level advanced spy type, and then another profanity. Amazing work. That is what a certain member within this chamber thinks about what's going on. Now, just the other day, I was watching on the news, Robert Jenrick was running through London with a hoodie on that said, Hamas is a terrorist. Whatever you think of Hamas, and we as a government, we recognise that they are a terrorist organisation, but it's in bad taste. And I was watching, and Kay Burley actually said that that's incitement. That's incitement. What do we make of that in this chamber? But I think as members, as elected members, we really need to think about some of the things that we put out there in the media. Before I came to this meeting, I was speaking to my daughter. She's an 8-year-old. And she saw the headline come up and she heard the words, Keir Starmer asks everybody to leave Lebanon. She said to me, Daddy, why are they asking us people to leave Lebanon? I said, there's going to be a war potentially there. And she said, who are they fighting with? And I said, there's potential that Israel might attack. And she said, but they're fighting with Gaza. Will they now stop in Gaza? That's an 8-year-old. And I said, I'm not sure. She said, well, if Keir Starmer is telling them to leave, why does he not just say stop? The future generation, so people who are making excuses here now, future generation, the next generation are not going to forgive us if we stay silent on this. So when we talk about women and children, when we talk about humanity and what about it in other areas, let's be honest with ourselves. Let's be honest with ourselves. And I think, final point that I just want to make is that yesterday, again, on the news, I was watching, there was a news article on Sky News that was saying that people were appalled that because of the sanctions on trade with Russia, cars were making it into Russia. Cars are making it into Russia, and people are up in arms. Cars are making it into Russia. Well, I'll tell you what, there were parts or components that are made here in this country that are killing innocent people. And if we can't speak out against that, then we need to take a good look at ourselves. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Whitaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually wasn't going to speak on this, but I feel that I must. I can fully understand where this motion is coming from, but some of the comments in here this evening by a certain councillor, Councillor Haig, when you mentioned people have bills to pay from arms sales, I find that genuinely abhorrent that an elected representative is paying bills on selling arms that are killing people, whether that be in Gaza or in Israel. You've got to remember on both sides of this here, people are dying. There are still over 100 hostages held, Jewish hostages that are held. It's a terrible conflict, but I do want to raise that. The comment raised by Councillor Haig I found abhorrent, and I want to disassociate myself and hopefully this chamber from it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And Councillor Haig, would you
Point
want
of
to?
clarity, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I didn't say that people have bills to pay, therefore it doesn't matter that arms made in our constituency are being made to harm people. What I said was the remaining licences are for things such as trainer aircrafts, naval equipment, telecoms and data equipment, and the government would not be able to legally remove those licences at the moment on the basic evidence. There are people who have jobs in our constituency making those things where there is currently no evidence that those parts are being used for humanitarian crisis. I'm not saying that we should send arms to Israel because people have got bills to pay. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor McGowan and then Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to take a little bit of heat out of this conversation right now. I've enjoyed listening to what's been said tonight, and I do have my own views on the Israel-Palestine issue, which is longer than I am alive. However, I am one thing, and that's consistent. And in this council chamber, I've said it multiple times that for my part, I don't get involved in issues that this council doesn't directly deal with. The last motion of council tax is something that this council does deal with, even if it was a motion about the national government's priorities on it. But when it comes to this, I will be glad to have a conversation with any member in here and have a conversation about what you think, what I think, in a reasonable dialogue. But in terms of this motion, I'm just going to be abstaining because I have yet to hear one single Hapton Park resident raise the issue with me. But that is just from the area I represent, I guess. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
I just wanted to quickly just say that for me, it's not about the 1%. It's about making a stand and what we've decided as an actual council to say to the government what we want to actually stand for. So for me, the 1% doesn't really mean much.
Thank you. Is there any other member on this issue? Right. Councillor Birtwistle, as mover of the motion, you have the right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to take a couple of points. I don't accept that the fact that we'll be breaking any legal laws. I mean, the UN have condemned it as being an illegal war. I don't accept that excuse why we can't put a block on arms sales. It's all a matter of what the government want. If the government want to do it, they can do it. The government stopped pensioners my £300 without going to anybody. So I don't doubt that the government, if they want to stop the killing, and they want to help, and they want to show that they don't really want this to go on, they can do it. So I don't accept that. I equally am horrified that Councillor Haig is concerned about that. I wouldn't want my bills being paid by the blood of that little girl in that barber shop. And I find that absolutely horrendous what you've just said.
Councillor Birtwistle, I think she clarified herself.
She did say that she had. She said they had to pay the bills and they had to earn the money. If I had to pay my bills off the blood of a little girl in a barber shop blown away by a missile fired from an F-35 fighter, I think I would not pay the bill. I have to say, I am horrified that you've said that. And I must have been, I've been here for 41 years and I've never heard anything like that before. I don't accept the other arguments about it. And I would just wish and hope that the members in this room tonight say to the government, surely enough is enough. The consciences of the members of Parliament to see the death and destruction of the innocent, that includes the hostages, to see the death and destruction of innocent people in a far-off country that we can't see, an area that's been completely obliterated, where 2 million people are now living in abject poverty and relying on aid. And now it's being expanded now. And tonight, I believe that Israel has said they're going to send the tanks into southern Lebanon, a country, an independent country, and they're just going to drive tanks in there and wipe out everybody. Going to Beirut. Beirut was a hellhole 30, 40 years ago when everybody did it then. It's going back to that now. All I'm saying is support this motion. Tell the government that we want this to stop. We won't stop it, but at least we'll make a stand by doing this. And I support the lady that seconded this by calling for a name vote. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And we'll now, and it was asked for a name vote. So can we please stand for that to ask for a name vote? So we're going to a name vote. Can I ask the Chief Executive to call out your name and please vote?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members, I'm just going to read out your names individually. If you can indicate whether or not you're for the motion, against the motion, or whether or not you're abstaining from the motion. I begin with Councillor Aurangzeb Ali, Councillor Afrasiab Anwar, Councillor Lee Ashworth, Councillor Howard Baker, Councillor Gail Barton, Councillor Gordon Birtwistle, Councillor Helen Bridges, Councillor Margaret Brindle, Councillor Joanne Broughton, Councillor Ashley Brown, Councillor Saeed Chowdhury, Councillor Barbara Dole, Councillor Ivor Emo, Councillor Sue Graham, Councillor Gemma Haig, Councillor Alex Hall, Councillor John Harbour, Councillor Bill Horrocks, Councillor Alan Hosker, Councillor Becky Hughes, Councillor Martin Hurt, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Shah Hussain,
4.
Councillor Jacqueline Inkle, Councillor Mohammed Ishtiaq, Councillor Nusrat Kazmi, Councillor Saida Kazmi, Councillor Anne Kelly, Councillor Lubna Khan, Councillor Jack Lorna, Councillor Alan Lewis, Councillor Gordon Lishman, Councillor Margaret Lishman, Councillor Sherish Lawn, Councillor Jamie McGowan, Mr. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Paul Reynolds, Councillor Christine Solis, Councillor Mike Steele, Councillor Jeff Sumner, Councillor Mark Townsend, Councillor Andy Waddington, Councillor Don Whittaker, last but not least, Councillor Fiona Wilde. Thank you.
This motion, thank you. This motion is now carried. Right, and we're moving on to item number 6, items for decision by the council. Can I point out to members that items for decision by the council are treated as motions. Once a proposal has been moved and seconded, members may speak once and for a maximum of 5 minutes. They may only speak again on an amendment where appropriate, and executive minute extracts, hold on, is that right? Yeah. Executive minute extracts have been published as agenda supplement with recommendations to council highlighted in bold. And item 6A, independent remuneration panel appointments. Councillor Anwar, will you please move the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the report.
Councillor Margaret Lishman, will you please second that report?
Second the report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any member? All in favour, please show. Thank you. All against, please show. Any abstentions? Thank you. Those recommendations are approved. Item 6B, review of polling districts and places and stations. Councillor Anwar, will you please move the report?
I move the report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Margaret Lishman, will you please second the report?
Second the report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any member? All those in favour, please show. Thank you. All those against, please show. Any abstentions? Thank you. Those recommendations are approved. Item number 6C, constitutional updates and appointments. Members, please note, the finalised nominations are as set out in the agenda supplement. Councillor Lorna will remain as member of DC Committee and Councillor Hughes is nominated to the committee as substitute member. The following nominations have been received for the position of Vice Chair of Scrutiny: Councillor Gail Barton and Councillor Mike Steele. Councillor Anwar, will you please move the report as per the finalised nominations?
I move the report, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Margaret Lishman, will you please second that report?
Second the report, Mr. Mayor.
Any member? Right. We firstly go to the vote to approve the nominations to committees as set out in the supplement. To note the minor constitutional amendment at Part 5.3 and to approve the proposed amendments to Part 3 and Part 8 of the Constitution as set out in the report. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. All those against, please show. Any abstentions? Thank you. Those recommendations are approved. Secondly, we'll move to the vote on the appointment of Vice Chair of Scrutiny. Those in favour of Councillor Barton, please show.
Can you keep your hands up, please?
Thank you. Those in favour of Councillor Steele, please show. Councillor Steele, Councillor Steele is appointed Vice Chair of Scrutiny. Item number 60, selective licensing. Those with interest, yes. Make your getaway. Right, folks, and sorry, right, members, and I want to highlight that we are voting on the budget and not on the actual selective licensing. Okay, and Councillor Lorna, will you please move the report? Oh, it's... Right, take two. Councillor Lorna, will you please move the report?
I'll move the report. Mr.
Thank
Mayor.
you. Councillor Lishman, will you please second that report?
Second the report, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any member, bearing in mind we're only voting on the budget? No? All those in favour, please show. All those against, please show. Any abstentions? Thank you. Those recommendations are approved. Can we ask the members to come back in? You're able to stay, Councillor Lewis. All right. Yeah. Right. Okay. Item 6E, Townley Park Master Plan. Councillor Lorna, will you please move the report?
I move the report, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Anwar, will you please second the report?
I second the report, Mr. Mayor.
Any member? Councillor McGowan? They should be back. We did ask them to be back. What do you suggest, Councillor McGowan? Okay, well, I'm okay with that. We'll wait for a couple of minutes. Dave?
We're going to a vote on a £300,000 item, and there's members of the council missing. There's only one from my party. There's members that aren't. Fine, okay. So this is the Townley Park Master Plan, Mr. Mayor? Yeah. Okay. Hopefully everyone's read this document. It's on the budget. Yeah, that's fine, that's fine. So hopefully everybody's read the Townley Park Master Plan, which for those who haven't, it's basically a document that says what we're going to do to improve Townley Park. Now to me, this report that's being put to us is asking for the council for £300,000 to progress the master plan. Now, this master plan came to the scrutiny committee the other week, and what's contained in it is the normal things you would expect to see if you asked people what to do to improve a park. So people talk about better signage, people talk about getting speeding cars, reducing the number of speeding cars up Townley, but essentially, there's three main things within the document, which is, number one, putting a glamping and caravan site behind Applecross on the old 9-hole golf pitch, and also and a cycle path, new facilities for football down the bottom at the bottom of the hole, and then also the potential to have parking on the Fullage Recreation Ground. Now, I don't have any issue with any of these suggestions. In fact, I read the document and thought, yeah, to be fair, that's there are some issues that I do like, some issues that I don't like, but that's not what I wanted to talk about and I wanted to bring to full council, because we paid £23,000 for this master plan to be put together by an external company. And we seem to have a culture of consultants in this place. This is just a park, ultimately. It's just a park. And I think there's 45 members of this council, all who have been in Townley Park, some of us more than others, but everybody knows Townley Park. It's the best park in Burnley, some would argue. So to pay £23,000 for a document to be put together to how to improve it, it stings a little, but here's where it gets a bit crazy for me. Right now, this council is being asked to pay is being asked to put aside £300,000 for the master plan. Now, I asked the head of Green Spaces in scrutiny, and a colleague, Councillor Broughton, asked the same question as well. The £300,000, how much of the plan would be able to be put in place with this £300,000? And the answer is nothing, 0%. None of this plan is going to get put in place with £300,000. The £300,000, weirdly enough, is going to be spent on more reports to see how much it's going to cost to put the plan into effect. So just to recap, we've paid £23,000 for a plan. We want £300,000 to put the plan into, not to put the plan into effect, to do anything up Townley, but just to create another report to see how much it would cost. And here's the cracker for me. When asked how much it would be to implement the plan itself, the officer did not have an answer to that question. So we don't know how much the master plan is going to cost. We're going to have to spend £300,000. We asked for a ballpark figure. There is no figure for that yet. So effectively, we're being asked to sign off £300,000 for a further consultants for a plan that we have, that we already have. Look, I've been campaigning for 3G pitches for all the football teams playing in Padiham. I can't even get small diggers on the Apton Rec for toddlers to use, both based on the financials. That's why I can't really be supporting this way of working. Like £300,000 to employ external ecological specialists to develop a habitat plan, a signage interpretation plan, external architects to develop design options, including undertaking a park traffic survey, all without any clue to how much it will cost to make the changes in the actual plan itself. Now, I'm not being rude. I just think we can do better as a council. I really do. There's 45 of us, but yet we're putting £300,000 to see how much something had cost. I remember when I got the pump track in Hapton, I worked with the parish council to do it. I got a budget that I managed to secure, 70,000 in total. But the thing is, I didn't go and pay a company to tell me how much it would cost to build the pump track. I had the budget and I went to companies and I said, what can you give me for this amount? Why aren't we working like that when it comes to Townley? Instead, we're going to spend £300,000 to ask them to tell us how much it is. Crazy, it's baffling. And I don't feel like I'm just standing up for residents in Hapton and Padiham here. I will be finished very shortly, Mr. Mayor. I'm not just standing up for Hapton and Padiham residents here, but all across the borough too, who we'll see later in this meeting are apparently facing a £271,000 budget shortfall, which will no doubt require us to raise council tax by the maximum amount permitted when it comes to budget. I just don't agree with that. This is £300,000. So until we have a budget agreed for how much the master plan will actually cost, as a ballpark, don't need to be exact, then how can we seriously vote to have £300,000 to spend on it when we're doing physically nothing with that money at Townley Park? And that's why I just can't support the plan. I raised this with the exec member before this meeting at the scrutiny, so it will come as no surprise to Councillor Lishman on this. But like I say, I wouldn't run my business like this, and I don't think the council should be running like this. So I can't support the plan, Mr. Mayor. And I hope that all members actually vote against this until we have that final figure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to take on board the comments that have come from Councillor McGowan, but I just want to say that I think I'm not quite sure. There's been obviously a breakdown in the communication here. I think what we need to recognise, and I'll use the example of the Levelling Up Fund. The reason why, as a council, we were able to go for Levelling Up round one was because we had a plan. So when that funding came available, we had plans already in place that would allow us to then apply for that funding to make the changes that we needed. And that has resulted in Newtown Mail, it's resulted in, obviously, Town to Turf, and then the other plans for the train station. What this report is asking for is actually using those that figure, using that amount to be able to put us in a position where we can develop and make the experience and make the best park in Burnley, or actually one of the best parks in Lancashire, if not the country, even better. And if we're going to be in a position to do that, we have to, sometimes you have to spend that resource or put some money to the side in order for us to be in a position. And what the consultants will do is get us to that position where actually we've got concrete plans for when funding external does become available, we can start to get officers to apply for that, so we're in a place where actually we can access it and make the improvements that we want. So I just wanted to make that clear, that up in terms of the fees that the colleagues are asking about. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What Councillor McGowan says really expresses his naivety about how local government finance works. What he needs to realise is that local authorities were hollowed out from 2010 onwards, and you know, we did have a golden past where we were able to employ hundreds more staff than we employ now, and therefore we wouldn't have needed necessarily to go outside for consultants to do all this type of work. But also, and to echo what Councillor Anwar said, master plans equal grant bids, in my way of looking at things. If you want to get money from other sources, whether it be private sector or other public bodies like Sport England or and so on, then you need to have a plan to show how you would spend their grant money and how you would develop your assets. So we need to do that. We need to pump that, prime that pump in order to get in order to attract the additional funding to develop the master plan, and as Councillor Anwar said, to develop Townley into something that we can be even more proud of than we are now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is possibly more of an observation, but 2 weeks ago at scrutiny, we spent about an hour discussing this master plan for Townley Park. We had a really good sort of cross-party debate, and there were things raised that we had concerns about here. And so I was very disappointed to see when this came back to us that none of our concerns were in any way reflected. It's as though our conversation had never happened, an hour of discussion. So I was really disheartened to read this, and you know, nothing had been listened to. So I think we need probably to use our scrutiny committee a lot better than we do, because we did have really good discussions, and yeah, I'm disappointed that certain things could have been perhaps separated off. You know, I think it's great that we've got a big master plan ahead, but some of it we felt was perhaps a little too ambitious, just to paraphrase what came up. So I think it's going to be difficult potentially passing this, because we haven't really been listened to at scrutiny, unfortunately. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Right, where can we start? £300,000 for a consultancy, as Councillor McGowan's already said, cast design consultants. We've effectively been told it's a very, very nice, glossy document that I've read, all 66 pages of it. It's very nice, but effectively, we're being asked to consult this consultancy firm to go out and tell us what we've already got in the plan, really. We're not building the gardens of Versailles or Hampton Court here. This is Townley Park. We all agree, if there's opportunities there to actually enhance the facilities there, then that's great. But £300,000 on a consultancy fee, which is effectively telling us that we need to install new signage, cut the number of bowling greens down there, build a caravan park, tell people about the heritage of the place, maybe build a cycle track, and possibly increase parking charges. And we're going to pay £300,000 for this. Now, I can fully accept where Councillor Graham's coming from regarding funding. The former Member of Parliament, I seem to remember, actually wrote a letter of support for grant funding for Townley Hall. I think it was to the sum of £878,000, which was in addition to the funding that the Burnley Council already had. I'm open to negotiations on getting consultation, but we know what we want. We've already got a plan. And to spend £300,000 when we've already got that, just to apply for grant funding, which we can do already, I find a little bit unbelievable. But as I say, it's Townley Hall. It is a lovely place. It could do with improvements, but £300,000 when we already have a plan in place would not be a good spend suggestion for the constituents of Burnley, the council taxpayers. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
And Councillor Barton and then Councillor Lishman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to echo Councillor Hughes' comments about the scrutiny discussion that we had. But I would also like to ask the executive member for clarification, because we've just heard from colleagues on the opposite bench there that the whole amount is going to be used for consultancy. But on page 664, it says quite clearly that the balance of the budget to be used as match funding for schemes. So I'm assuming that we're not match funding schemes of £2,000 or £3,000. They're going to be quite substantial schemes. So I'd like to confirm whether what is in the report is correct, or what has happened in a verbal conversation that we have no proof of is correct. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Lishman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I find myself agreeing with a number of colleagues. One of the things that I thought when I looked at the plan was it was very clear there was 300,000 to be allocated. What I thought it lacked clarity in was saying what that was going to be used for. Thank you, Councillor Barton, for pointing out the matched funding element. But in all of the proposals, and as I understand it, we are looking at those that were categorised as A in the first year. But in all of those proposals, they need to be worked up to find partners and to find that matched funding. I'm not sure we have a capacity as a council to do all of that, and there might be instances where we need assistance, hopefully from some of the partners that we match with in order to achieve. Not all of those schemes will go ahead. Listening to the debate at scrutiny, and I was there, one of the things that became very clear was that the speeding traffic using the route through Townley Park is something that has to be tackled as a priority and early on. Lots of other things were mentioned at scrutiny, and I've given Councillor Lorna that list, as well as I'm sure he's had a briefing from the officer involved as well. 300,000 is there to get the ball rolling. It is not going in consultancy fees. The reason consultants were used in the instance of drawing up the master plan was to some extent to make sure that we had somebody independent doing the consultation with our residents, rather than us going out and saying, you'd really like this, wouldn't you? But asking independently. And sometimes as a council, you have a responsibility to ask those questions independently. So I think that's an important point. Trying to badge this as consultancy fees on top of consultancy fees shows a naivety in the way this council is run, that perhaps you need a bit of help in how we do it.
Councillor Brindle.
Thank you, Chair. A very well-received report. I've read it through twice, taking two different points of view as I went through. This seems to be revolving around the £300,000 going forward. So can I draw everybody's attention to page 753, which lists a number of areas where consultants will be used. Burnley Borough Council is just circulating a report to councillors and officers, sharing key findings and consulting with relevant heritage bodies re-proposed changes. That is all Burnley Council seems to be doing. Now, I can take Councillor Lishman's point that, and Councillor Graham's point that staff have been hollowed out from Burnley Council. But if you go down the rest of this list, where it's Burnley Council and executive consultants, surely preparing a funding bid and some of the other proposals here, are we saying that really we haven't got a degree of expertise within the council, or is it easy just to allocate 300,000 and toss it over to somebody else to forward this plan? The plan, I think, is very good. There's a lot of information in there, but when it comes to things like traffic speeding and footpaths, surely we don't need consultants to tell us that the 5K run footpaths need the potholes filling in and widening, and that traffic calming and traffic issues need to be amended. Burnley Council is responsible for the highways in the park. Originally, the speed limit used to be 5 miles an hour. It's now 20 miles an hour. It's being used as a rat run. This was raised at scrutiny, and as has been said by Councillor Bridges, the long discussion that we had at scrutiny doesn't seem to have really been taken on board. So although I support the plan and the proposals, or the vast majority of the proposals in it, I have difficulty in agreeing to £300,000 to take forward what should be half done in the report and also done by Burnley Council officers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Husker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Taking into account the 300,000, whichever way you go, if it goes to consultancy fees or whatever, do you not think that there's other areas what need money spending on? And I'll tell you why I mentioned this to our colleague. It's because I had a walkabout with Woodman Patel and with Simon Goff. As you remember, Mr. Woodman, we went to an area on the right path where it's all flooded in and it wants money spending on it, money investing on the right path. It's all flooding, all embankments caving in. There's a park in Acton what's flooding, and every time it rains hard, all water runs down into pens. They don't get money like this spent on it. And you can just pick £300,000 out for a consultation fee. But but you've just said yourselves, it's a consultation fee. Well, the main thing is, it's still £300,000 of taxpayers' money. And I think it could be considered for other people. We'll pay council taxes, not just in Burnley, in Acton, Paddy, and all surrounding areas. And I think we should all be consulted better. You've got a scrutiny committee you're not taking notice of. Again, it's like being on DC. You make a decision, you don't like it, you come back here. You're going to scrutiny, if you make a decision, you're not being listened to. What's the point of having committees?
Councillor Lorna.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Townley Park is run on a skeleton staff. There is hardly anyone working there. We don't have a culture department in the council. We cannot enforce what is going on in Townley Park at the moment. I'm there at 5 o'clock. We need more resources, and if we put the resources into this from the council, we won't be able to do the other stuff. By spending, even if £300,000 is the most we're going to spend, we might not spend it all. If we invest properly into Townley Hall, we will reap the benefits, we will bring people in, and Burnley will make more money. That's my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Broughton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the issue that I've got is the same as I had coming in to this tonight, and I've listened to answers given, and I've still got a question about the £300,000 because I'm still not sure what's this going to be spent on. Getting the ball rolling doesn't really answer the question. So if we can, before we sign something off and we vote for something, it would be useful to know exactly what it is that we're actually spending the money on. If it's not consultants, then what is it? Thank you.
Thank you. And right. Councillor Lorna, since you moved the report, and Councillor Ann, what do you want to respond to any of those questions, or shall I move on to the vote?
Some of the consultation, obviously, we'll go back to consultation, so we might not get a glamping site. We have listened to what scrutiny have said, and everything that was a bit controversial that I've been told will go out again to the members of the public. So people had reservations about speeding traffic and who would end up on the glamping site. That is, by voting for this, you're not voting for a glamping site. I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we're going to go to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. All those against, please show. Thank you. Any abstentions? Thank you. Those recommendations are approved. Item 6F. Capital Budget Monitoring, Quarter 1. Councillor Margaret Lishman, will you please move the report?
Move the report, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Anwar, will you please second that report?
Second the report, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any member? Councillor McGowan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As the council leader will know, shared prosperity funding was put in place by the previous government to replace the European Regional Development Fund, £7.5 grand of which has directly helped us in Hapton with improvements to the Hapton Recreation Ground. However, given the new government has paused the shared prosperity fund, has the council leader had any indication about whether this funding is set to continue or not, or whether it's going to be cut going forward? Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Any other member? Councillor Anwar, do you want to respond to that?
You can do my
Sure. Yeah, in answer to the question with regards to the UKSPF, whether it will be extended or not, there's been no further information on that. There is talk, and I was going to come onto it in terms of the, as part of my strategic report with regards to where we are with the devolution deal, in terms of the conversations that are taking place, that will now sit, or hopefully sit with district councils. But as I said, that's a discussion that's taking place.
Thank you. And right, I'm going to move to a vote. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. All those against, please show. Any abstentions? Thank you. Those recommendations are approved. And item number 6G, Revenue Budget Monitoring, Quarter 1. Councillor Margaret Lishman, can you please move the report?
Move the report, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Anwar, will you please second that report?
I second the report, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any members or member? No? I'm going to go to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Those recommendations are approved. Item number 6H, Treasury Management. Councillor Margaret Lishman, will you please move the report?
Move the report, Mr Mayor. And I would just say we're in Quarter 1 reports that you've just passed and that one side of the chamber have abstained on. My comment would be that it's early days. It's the first quarter. We have a budget at the end of October. We don't have any idea yet what the settlement will be. which we don't normally hear until December, in terms of what we will get from central government. And I would remind Councillor McGowan that what we get from central government always works on the assumption of how much they expect us to put the council tax up by. That's how the system works. Just thought I'd remind you. So really, all I wanted to say in relation to this is it is, as usual, a crystal ball. We are making assumptions about what we will see in the future. So I suppose what I'm saying is that it's a health warning about what it says. I move it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any member? Oh, sorry. Yeah, Councillor Anwar, would you please second that report?
I'll second the report, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Going too fast. Any member? No, we'll go to a vote. All those in favour, please show. All those against, please show. Any abstentions? Thank you. Those recommendations are approved. Item number 6I, revenue budgets, latest positions and savings proposal. Councillor Margaret Lishman, will you please move the report?
I move the report, Mr. Mayor, and as I say, work in progress.
Thank you. Councillor Anwar, will you please second the report?
Second the report, Mr. Mayor, and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Any member? I've got Councillor McGowan and then Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you might gather by now, I'm all for saving money in this place. The last full council members will remember that I raised Burnley Market, asking if we could sit down and come up with a plan for what we can do to improve it, both for stallholders and residents. With half of the market now empty, something has to be done. And so I actually agree that knocking down the empty stalls on the right-hand side to create a usable space, as well as saving on business rates, which many won't realise have to be paid by the council if units aren't let, it's a good thing. If we're to go ahead with improving this site, then it would have to happen in any case anyway. So can I just ask, reiterating my point from last time, for collaboration when the next steps of the market are discussed? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, this sets the bedrock for the decisions we'll be making in February, so it's important that we analyse this report now in terms of the Council's future spending plans. I think the issue that we have on this side of the chamber is that when you look at the proposal for savings, let's just say it's pretty uninspiring stuff that's been come up with when you look at 3 years worth of basically spending profile, and basically there's just two items there to consider, one of them being a water bill and the other putting basically money into the market to try and get some business rate relief out of it. But there are other things in there. I'll come back to the markets in a moment, but basically overall it just lacks ambition, aspiration. Where's the reform? Where's the new ideas? How are we going to get money from the back office to frontline services to deliver the services that we all want in the future? There's just nothing there. The other assumptions that are in there though, and I think everybody needs to read them carefully, sometimes I think members skip over these reports, is that it is locking in a maximum council tax increase, basically for the next 3 years. That's the assumption that's being applied. Not reducing spending or applying some different spending profiles or reforms, locking in a maximum council tax increase and locking in basically a trebling of the bills for 7,000 working age households who are on council tax support. Because that is one thing that's in this council's gift to give, is basically council tax support. And currently, to get 95% help, it's intended to reduce that to 90% and then to 85%. So over these next 2 years, there's going to be a trebling of those in households' bills from around £70 now to over £200 in a couple of years' time. So that's baked in. And it is something this administration could change if they wanted to. Coming to the market, the market's interesting. Obviously, we've all seen how habits change and something does need to happen with the market. And there's a request for really £70,000 worth of investment from the Transformation Reserve. That's on top of another 125,000 that's already gone in this year. So that's the best part of £200,000 going into the market. The other 125k is on maintenance. Now, granted, there might well be good reason for this. We're going to see great returns in the future. But apart from the business rates, it basically says we're just going to generate £10,000 worth of income for all this extra investment. So £10,000 per year, and we're going to be investing the best part of 200,000. Now, where is the business case for the market? The report talks about everything should be associated with strategic intent. Where is the strategic intent? Where's the report, the business case, the return on investment? It's not there. So I'm afraid for those reasons about lack of aspiration, lack of ambition, locking in what's going to be happening over the next 3 years with the spending profile, and the fact that this market doesn't seem to have a business case around it, we're unable to support it and will be opposing it at this stage, hoping the executive can come up with something better by the time we get to February. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Lishman, Arunwal, if you want to respond.
Go first.
Okay. Thank you. Just in answer to the questions, hopefully there will be a strategic response or a report coming in with regards to what the plans are for the market, and all members will get to see that, and there will be a consultation process as a part of that as and when we get to that point. But just on the issues that Councillor Townsend raises, and it was just mentioned there that bills will increase for residents. We heard earlier on in the debate, and we saw at the last full council, that actually things being taken away and bills increasing, the impact that has on our residents, and that was just something that was just laughed off in a sense, that they're not important issues. Before the government came in, one of the things that was promised, correct me if I'm wrong, was that our bills would not increase. In October, our bills are set to increase, and at the same time we're taking away winter fuel payments. And I find it, I'm a little bit, I don't know, I'm really taken aback really, I don't know what to say, because the issue around council tax support and council tax going up each year, I know we're the administration here, and there will be a decision for us to be made in terms of the amount of council tax that's going to go up. But I remember Councillor Townsend was leader for quite a number of years. He sat on the executive, and all that time council tax always went up, and there was a reason for that, and I respect the reasons for that. So this sudden change of mind, I just don't understand. But there's another assumption that was always made, and it was always said, well, Conservatives are in government and they need to give us a better deal for local government. Well, actually, the boot is on the other foot now. We need a better deal for local government. And these are assumptions. They are assumptions because we don't know. The budget is in October. We don't know what sort of deal we're going to get. We hear that it could be a one-year deal and then it could be multiple-year deals going forward, but we don't know that. But I think just because now it's a change in government and you're sitting on the other side of the chamber, to change a tune, I think is not being true to yourself, I think. And then the other final point I just wanted to make was that there was we heard before about misinformation, and Councillor Barton mentioned about misinformation, things and tweets and messages that go out, and social media posts went out actually saying that this council will be increasing your council tax by the maximum amount. Well, actually, we've not made a decision on that. So I'm assuming there that Councillor Townsend knows something which suggests to me that he knows that the Police Crime Commissioner, Clive Grunshaw, is going to put up his precept by the maximum amount. I'm assuming that he knows that if Labour take control of the county council in May, they will be putting it up by the maximum amount. That's an assumption, and I think we talked about misinformation being shared that can have an impact on people's lives. Actually, misinformation like that can also have an impact on people's lives. So let's be clear that, you know, and as I said, I think Councillor Townsend and Councillor Graham, they are colleagues that I've worked with, and I respect their knowledge and expertise, particularly around finances. And, you know, it's disingenuous for them to be coming up now and saying, well, this isn't right, you're going to put the council tax up. I think it's unfair. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And Councillor Lishman. Yeah, you can, or you can wait till Councillor Lishman has said something.
You carry,
Right, okay, yeah.
you carry on, Councillor.
Can I ask him for it now, because I might react to it?
That's fine. Councillor Townsend, please.
I just want
explain
to
yourself.
I just want to correct Councillor Anwar, because he's accused me in the past of various things through Facebook posts and tweeting and things like that, which was incorrect, and he's just done it again. If he goes back and reads what was actually said, it said the council is planning to, not the council will do. So please get your terminology right if you're ever going to come into this council again accusing people of basically misrepresentation, because Councillor Anwar, you're a master of it. Thank you.
Councillor Baker.
Do you know?
Thank you very much. I just totally get shocked with Councillor Townsend every time he speaks now, I'm afraid. The current version of council tax goes back to the mid-70s, 1977 I think it was, when Labour was in control of Burnley. And right up till I think it was about 2006, 2007 when we had a coalition. Every year, Councillor Townsend put it up by the maximum, well, not Councillor Townsend, the Labour leader of the group and the Labour Party put it up by the maximum. Now, I'll be pleased to hear him object to that on a point of information and tell me what year they didn't put it up between them, because it's gone up from £670 a year to about 2,200 now. So I'd be interested to hear which ones I'm wrong on.
Councillor Lishman. Yes, we're going to wrap it up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad Councillor Townsend's enjoying being in opposition. It's nice to have somebody to talk to. I'd be a very foolish person if I was to tell you everything that I'm considering doing, or that the executive is considering doing. We've started this year, starting in May, we've introduced a system now where we're looking at monthly monitoring of the budgets. We are going to do some strong work sifting out what shouldn't be in there, what's in there because it's always been in there since Adam was a lad, and it's not going to stay in there. We're doing the same with the capital programme. I've let it go this quarter, but I want to see major progress on all of those capital programmes. If there isn't going to be major progress, then they will go, and we will save that money for another thing. We're going to be much stricter about it. If I produced figures, or if Finance Department produced figures that didn't make the maximum assumptions of what the council tax might be, and what we might, on the minimum assumption about what we might get from central government, if we didn't do that and produce those figures for you now, you would be standing here telling me I'm irresponsible, and I am not irresponsible. I keep a close eye on what happens in our budgets, as do the rest of the executive, and every one of them will tell you that they are nagged on a regular basis about their budgets and where we can make savings. Yes, the proposals at this stage are uninspiring. I've got ambition, but I'm not going to share it at this stage. We're in September, for heaven's sake. As far as I'm concerned, we do the budget in February. And that's when we'll be making the decisions, not now. What you are seeing are assumptions and a work in progress. And I would hope that you're all grown up enough to understand that and accept it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Going to a vote. All those in favour, please show. All those against, please show. Any abstentions? Thank you. Those recommendations are approved. Right, item number 7, reports from committee chairs. Can members please note that for this item, they should not refer to named individuals or specific addresses when asking questions or making observations. Questions on delegated functions or as licensing and planning should be directed to the relevant committee chair rather than to executive members. Where issues relate to proceedings held in private, members should not make reference which could lead to the identification of participants. Members should note that the Audit and Standards Committee has not met since last meeting of the Council. Therefore, there is no report from Councillor Whittaker this evening. Item number 7A, Scrutiny Committee. Councillor McGowan, will you move the report on page 819 in the agenda pack?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the report.
Any member? Councillor Harbour.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Regarding the report itself, it's quite an impressive report, and it covers what's gone over in scrutiny over the last quarter, if you like. But what I am concerned about is on the 4th paragraph down, Calico came and gave a presentation to scrutiny members, and which is great. I have no problem with that. But the issue I have is that there are only a third of this council who sit on scrutiny, and so 2/3 of us haven't seen that report, and we didn't see any presentations. And members of scrutiny were also asked or invited to go and meet the team as well over at Calico. And I just thought, Mr. Mayor and colleagues, that it would have been good if we'd all had the opportunity, because we all know the majority of us have Calico estates within our wards. So if that opportunity could be opened up to everybody in the council, that would be great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Birtwistle.
Carrying on from that, Mr. Mayor, the meeting was with Calico yesterday, an absolutely excellent meeting. Unfortunately, only 3 members of the scrutiny committee turned up, which was a shame, because the information that we gleaned from the heads of service within Calico on how they work, the future plans, which are quite impressive, particularly on adult social care, a thing that's very close to my heart. They're looking into how they can help with adult social care by setting up their own business to look after elderly people living in their properties. Was absolutely excellent. And Councillor Lewis was there along with his colleague sat next to him. And I believe that we had a very, very good response from Calico yesterday. And as I say, it is a pity that not more members of the scrutiny committee turned up initially, but it's a shame that not many more of the councillors were there, because it's easy to complain, but when you don't know what's going on, it's easy to complain, but there is a ways of sorting them out, and we were explained to us the reasons and how to sort them out. So I thank Calico for the meetings yesterday and for the information we got for them, and I would support anything that Councillor Harbour says about meeting these people again. Whether they have the time to meet all of us, I don't know, but what we had yesterday was excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McGowan, there's another member who was to ask something. Do you want to take that or do you want to respond to that? Councillor Broughton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to say I was very disappointed that I couldn't attend yesterday's meeting with Calico. Unfortunately, a lot of these meetings that are set up are during the day, and I know a lot of councillors work, I work Monday to Friday, 9 till 5:30, so unless they're in the evening, and I just want to make a general point really, because there's been quite a few meetings come through recently that I haven't been able to attend because they all tend to be during the day. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor McGowan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. No, I appreciate the point that Councillor Harbour raised about Calico. We did get a presentation at scrutiny. It was very interesting. I'm glad to see that Councillor Birtwistle and Barton and Lewis did turn up to the Calico meeting, which was good. Found myself in a similar position as Councillor Broughton. But the one thing I will take on board going forward, obviously we had CJ helping us, who has now moved from the council, so I'm working with Alison and Bazana, yes.
Bazana.
So going forward, thank you. So going forward, yeah, I will definitely work within my power to extend it to all councillors. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I think it's quite important that when a big partner like Calico does these kind of meetings, that every councillor is afforded that invitation if they can attend. So you've acknowledged that, and I hope that happens going forward. With regards to councillors not having the time to come, I'm sure there's somewhere within employment law that should allow. No? Okay. Depends on your employer. Okay. Right, and
Councillor Barton said she had a question.
oh, sorry, I do apologise. Councillor Barton.
No, that's fine, Mr Mayor. I wasn't sure whether I was able to come back or not after Councillor McGowan had spoken. I just wanted to say that I very much enjoyed the opportunity to speak to Calico yesterday. It was incredibly informative. I've been on annual leave from work this week. I also work a 9-to-5 job. And that's also meant that I've been able to take advantage of the visit that was arranged to Burnley Leisure and Culture at St Peter's Centre today as well. That invitation was open to everybody. I did ask when I attended today how many members had taken up that opportunity. Multiple times and dates were offered. That was also disappointing.
Thank you. And you want to respond, Councillor? No. Okay. And agenda item 7B, Councillor Kelly, will you move the report on licensing committee, page 821 in the agenda pack?
Happy to move the report, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Any member? Councillor Hosker, please refrain from what we said about personal participants and so on.
I hope Mr Mayor's not singling me out.
I'm not singling it out. I'm just saying what the rules are, and that is not to discuss individual participants of a meeting. Please stick to the rules.
Finished?
Yes.
What I want you for, Chair, and I'm bringing it up here, well, we've got our executive here. What I'm concerned with, I don't know who's responsible, yourself as Chair or our executive, but I'm concerned about taxi drivers who are picking up who can't speak English. Is it not a licensing condition? I took it up with Joanne Swift, and I told Joanne Swift that I'm going to come to you and yourself because it's a concern. If you've got a driver sat at the side and you've got young women travelling over Christmas and they want to go to a certain destination and they can't understand what the driver's saying, it's concern to be had. I need to know, as a councillor and an elected member, and I'm sure other people in this chamber do, that people are travelling safe over Christmas. I asked Joanne, and I told Joanne Swift that I was going to mention it to you both tonight, and she agreed with me. She said, no, it's a concern, what doesn't bring it up? Please bring it up at full council.
Councillor Kelly or executive responsible going to respond?
Sorry, I am happy to respond, Councillor Hosker. If you want a review of licensing conditions, which seems to be what you're asking for, that the licence needs to have some different conditions on it, although it does relate to a council functions, those powers are delegated to the licensing committee, of which you are the vice chair. Therefore, if you wanted to put it on the agenda, it would be quite simple for you to do. I believe the officers have already apprised you of that, and that you were told it had to come to the licensing meeting, and I will make sure that it is on the next agenda for discussion.
Thank you. I think what Councillor Kelly said is the affirmative information. Thank you very much. Development Control, Councillor Solis, will you move the report on page 823 on your agenda pack?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move my report.
Thank you. Any member? No, thank you. Item 8, Strategic Plan Progress Reports. Members, please note that for this item, they should not refer to named individuals or specific addresses when asking questions or making observations. I will take each report in order. I will ask for any questions on the report, and the executive member will respond to a number of questions. The same procedure will then be followed for observations. Can I remind members with a question or observation to clearly quote the page number and reference, and allow time for the executive member and everyone else to find it on their agenda packs? Also, will members please be concise in their questions and observations? Councillor Anwar, will you please move your report on page 826 of the agenda pack?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will move my report, and I just wanted to add a little bit of information with regards to a number of those items. I think the first one is regarding the County Combined Authority. I think all members will recall that we had an extraordinary meeting here and a resolution was passed. Unfortunately, before we could submit our expression of interest, the government announced prior to that, but prior to us even sending in our expression of interest, that they were going to continue with the deal that had been agreed with the upper tier authorities. That's what's happened. So we are in a position where we are obviously waiting for further information in terms of what district involvement in that will be. With regards to the long-term plan for towns, again, we're still waiting for government announcement or further information in terms of how that will progress as well. A lot of work has gone into that, particularly from partners and forming that board. So we will, and I will keep all members informed and appraised of that as well. With regards to the Paddy and flood defences, I just want to say thank you to all members for their support, but particularly group leaders who signed up to the letter that went to government and the Environment Agency, just saying how important it was that funding came through. That was absolutely vital. So, as I said, all members, ward councillors, but particularly group leaders who supported that intervention that we put in when we were informed that there was going to be a shortfall in the funding. With regards to the LGA peer review, again, I just want to reiterate my thanks to all partners, all officers, and members as well for their contributions, because as a local district council, to have your peers come in and have a look at and really delve into everything that you do as a council, and for them to come out and make some of the observations and comments that they've made is absolutely fantastic. The wider report, the full report will be issued, and that will be shared with members as well. But I think it is an opportunity. I know sometimes here in the chamber we will disagree on things, and that's all part of the the politics and the nature of the work that we do, but actually for other peers to come in and have a look at the work that's going on. And that, I think, is something that every single member contributes to, and everybody should be celebrating that. And I think it's fantastic news for Burnley on the whole, and it's something that should be celebrated. Newtown Mill, Councillor Lorna and myself had the opportunity to have a sneak preview of the work that's gone on there. And it's fantastic to see, and I think all members will have received an invitation to attend the launch of that, which again will be brilliant to see. And I know that it's been an aspiration for every single member here. We've had that mantra, we've been saying, haven't we, aspiration to become a university town. But actually, when I was stood there with Councillor Lorna and some of the members of UCLan, it actually dawned on us that actually we've achieved that. So now it's not just an aspiration, we are a university town, and the opening of Newtown Mill will be the start of that. And I'd like to congratulate Burnley College on obviously the expansion that they've had as well, which is through support from Burnley Council, so all members involved in that as well. The other thing I just wanted to mention was obviously everybody's, and people have alluded to it, but obviously we had the national unrest that took place. Again, I just want to thank our residents, the people of Burnley, who rejected that hatred and said no, that actually things like that were not welcome here in Burnley. And it's all that work that goes on in peacetime when we're meeting together, we have made those contributions, everybody works together, pulls together, that actually ensured that we didn't have any sort of issues on our streets or in our communities. And particularly I'd like to thank Councillor Rangzebali and Councillor Ishtiaq, who particularly were going out and working with residents in Queensgate, but particularly some of the business owners. Other members were ringing up on a regular basis as well, just to make sure that nothing would happen. And I want to thank those volunteers from our community who actually saw some of the rhetoric that was out there and actually then said, we're going to do something positive and set up bubbles in the park. I know Councillor Khan was heavily involved in that, but actually those volunteers that did that and actually shed a really positive spotlight on that. And I know Mr Mayor and the MP and other members of this council as well were in attendance. It was despite the rainfall, all the organisers thought that actually the rain is falling. And it came down, heavy downpour. The organisers thought nobody's going to turn up. Actually, the people of Burnley said no. And that was the testament to the people of the town. People turned up, and it was an absolutely fantastic celebration. It's something that we should be proud of. But I want to finish by saying that actually the work that we did as a town, as a community, and all members did, is being used by the LGA and by MHCLG as an example of good practice. Because initially it was, well, actually these troubles are going to come to Burnley. But actually 22 years of hard work meant that they didn't. So now they're coming to us and saying, we want to learn from how did you do that? And I think, again, that's something that every member, our communities, our residents, all of our partners should be commended on. I move my report, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. And Councillor Anwar. And any member? And I've got Councillor Barton, Townsend and Hosker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for your report, Councillor Anwar. I have just picked up my invitation to the Newtown Mill preview. We touched on this a couple of minutes ago about the accessibility of, 826 PR1. Oh no, sorry, 827 PR5. Yes. Yes, sorry. We just touched on this a couple of minutes ago about members' availability during normal working hours. Is there any way that a second session or a change to the proposal can be made? Because I think we have recognised that lots of us either have to take annual leave or have difficulties taking time off work to be as involved in council business as we would like to be.
Thank you. Can you take a few? Yeah, so I've got Councillor Townsend and then Councillor Hosker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And this is page 829, PE1. First of all, I'd like to congratulate all the children who've had the recent success in the recent examinations and congratulate Burnley College on what is truly an outstanding result in 100% pass rate. My question, though, is on early years and key stage 2, because far too many of the borough's children are not reaching acceptable standards of reading, writing and maths in their early years, and ultimately end up not being included in pass rates at later points because many don't end up taking some exams at all. So I understand there's no quick fix to this, but can you please update the council on the work, on any work that might be being done to raise standards in early life so the borough's children are getting a fair chance in life? Thank you.
Do you want to take one from Councillor Hosker?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Anwar, good report. as always.
Page number, sir.
Oh, sorry. It's PR1, page 2, it's 826, mate. Councillor Anwar, as I was saying, good report as always. What I wanted to ask you, my question to you, is the proposal what Councillor Whittaker put to you regarding the fuel allowance. You've got all leaders to sign a piece of paper to send off to government. Have we got a response, is my question to you. And while you're thinking about that one, Councillor, I'd just like to say, smart you look. Every time you come into this chamber, to me, you always look very smart. You know what? I always think you make a good turnout. A bit like myself, you make the effort. It's surprising what hard work does to get a nice suit instead of donating.
And the question is?
I've asked him a question.
All right. The second one. Do you shop at Burnley? Light-hearted joke, light-hearted joke. Councillor Anwar, do you want to respond to those questions? Very good question, though. Councillor Hosker.
Councillor Hosker just obviously mentioned my suit, and I would like to declare it was a gift from my wife. Once again, I'm behaving like a silly sausage, aren't I? I do apologise. Right, just in answer to the questions, Councillor Barton is absolutely right. With regards to obviously the opening of Newtown Mill, the reason that date has been chosen is because it coincides with the bondholders event, which takes place on the same day, and we will have Lord Wajid Khan attending, and it links into that, and obviously the MP will be attending as well. And then members have been invited off the back of that. So, in answer to your question around, can a second session be organised? Absolutely, a second session can be organised. We'll speak to officers to try and get that sorted for you as well, so that any members who miss out on that don't going forward. So I think that's a very important point. Councillor Townsend, in terms of, you're absolutely right, in terms of early years, we don't often hear the information on that, particularly around, we hear about GCSE and A-levels. With regards to the early years, there has been a lot of work that has gone on, particularly around two-year-old funding that's come through LCC in terms of getting children into early years education as early as possible, but with two-year funding that comes in. That's obviously an LCC function, it's not something that we have. And there's lots of interventions that are going in through the family hubs as well, with work going on there. But the point that you raise is a very important one, and it links back to, in terms of vulnerability, and there is a gap. And this is where I think it's very important that any sort of deal that we get for Lancashire tackles those vulnerabilities, particularly when we're talking about, for example, COVID. What COVID did for us was actually laid bare the inequality that exists in society. And then post-COVID, one of the things that, just by natural course, what we've done is we've actually gone back to business as usual. And those gaps that are there that exist, and it's something that was picked up by the peer challenge as well, how we're going to close those gaps. So what I want to see actually is going forward is that the devolution deal actually helps us to target some of those resources, particularly in parts of the county, the east, places like Burnley, Hyndburn, Rosendale, Pendle, where we've got that, there's a bigger gap. Why should children born and who are raised in the east of the county fare off worse in terms of attainment and achievement with their counterparts in other parts of the county? There are lots of interventions going on. I don't have a full list of all the things that are going on in terms of your question, but if you want, that can be pulled up and we can get that information of all the different, but I do know there's a lot of work going on via the family hubs, via the early years funding that's been invested through LCC, and there will be other work as well. But as I said, I don't have the full list of all the different interventions, but it is a priority for us. And as one of the things that we have done, and I know the Chief Executive has organised and is meeting very shortly with the Director of Education at LCC to raise these very issues. So it will be brought up. Okay. In regards to Councillor Hosker, other than commenting on my Sue, the letter that we wrote to government, we have not yet had a response, not to my knowledge. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Councillor Anwar? Any observations? Councillor Kelly, McGowan, Townsend, and then Lewis.
I've lost my page number now. PE1, page 828, is it? Anyway, PE1. Where you talk about the national unrest, just wanted to share something with you during that time that it was all on television, and there was so much about Burnley as well. I have two granddaughters, well, the two older granddaughters, aged 25 and 20, and the 25-year-old says something about, oh, building bridges, she said. When I was at school, I went to different schools and we met up with other children, and that was part of building bridges. The 20-year-old said, why did you have to do that? And she said, well, after all the trouble there was. And the 20-year-old didn't know anything about it. She'd not learned about it. She'd not heard about it. She's reasonably savvy. She actually works in Liberata. But I thought we've come such a long way that a 20-year-old who's fairly savvy didn't know anything about it. We've moved on. And I think, I think sometimes we've got to step back and think, we have moved a long way. There is some very, very positive stuff going on. And sometimes, we only focus on the bad things, don't we? And the problems that might have happened and actually didn't. And I think we should be aware that we've moved a long way and that things were good. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. And Councillor McGowan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is PR1, page 826. It's some really good news, actually, and I'm not going to compliment you on your suit like Councillor Oscar has, but I do think your report is very positive, the paddy and flood defences being a particular positive. Just as an observation about the County Combined Authority, we obviously had a meeting where we discussed all the options, and I said I feel a little bit vindicated from that meeting, because I said at the time that we were speeding ahead and we were talking about this and talking about that, but what we really needed to do is wait for the government to come back and see what they were going to say. Now, whether you agree or disagree with it, the Labour government have come back and said the deal that was on the table is the one that we're going ahead with, and it were kind of pointless us having the big conversation that we did, not to disrespect anyone pushing for that, but I did feel at the time that it was a speed, it was like we've got to get it, we've got to get it, we've got to get it, in the hope that things could be changed. But I don't know, I just thought the sensible decision at the time was to wait and see what come about. And if, on the other hand, in the council leader's report right now, it had said that the government had rejected the CCA, then I'd have been very happy to open up conversation about where we would go from here. But it's, yeah, I just feel a little bit vindicated, and I wanted to put that on record. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
What we're in the comfort within there is the wanting to see a more deeper and strengthened devolution deal with proposals within the next 12 months. So I think that is positive. It's not sort of ultimate sure, but I think the role to an elected mayor is potentially there, providing the goodwill on all sides. And it would be extremely good deal. Thank you for that. Secondly, going back to page 829 and PE1, I thank the council leader for his response on the consensus of the city's report and publish it on an annual basis. What was right at the bottom of the research in the country, which is Google, 55 out of 55 authorities in terms of our attainment of that, coming at that stage. In early years, and Chorley and South Ribble, just down the M65 motorway. So, okay, it is an LCC responsibility, but we've always said that this has got to be key for increasing the aspiration, ambition, and improving the lives of our people. So I'm encouraged that there's certain things going on, but we need to do more. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
Councillor Lewis, can you take another one? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it's page 826, PR1. Echoing what some other members have already said. I'm obviously delighted about the Padiham flood defences, and thank you to the leader for coming down when it was all announced to Padiham with other ward members from Gawthorpe and Haptonwood Park, which are obviously both affected by the flood defences. So that was great to see, and I'm really pleased that's going ahead. The other thing in the same page number was County Combined Authority. To say disappointed when I read the announcement from government is possibly an understatement, and I have to admit possibly a few expletives left my mouth at the time. The only, as Councillor Townsend alluded to, the only glint of light there is that there is this ask from government to put forward stronger proposals in the coming 12 months. With the idea to try and get towards a mayoral authority. And I hope the council leader will sort of shout from the rooftops about that with other authorities to try and get that message out there that we want to go ahead with that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Anwar. You want to respond to those observations?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. On the first point from Councillor Keller, very important message there. In terms of, there's a whole generation. I witnessed what happened in 2001 in my hometown. And it was a conscious decision for myself and other people who got involved in organisations like building bridges, was that we wanted to change what people thought about our town. And often one of the criticisms that we got from people was that you meet for tea and coffee and samosas and biscuits, what does it achieve? Well, actually what it achieves is that 22 years later, when things were not right, we could pick up the phone to each other and we could make sure that actually that kind of hatred was not welcome in our town. But actually, it's great, but it also goes to show the efforts that were going on behind the scenes. And I know, as I said, I was speaking to Councillor Ishtiaq, Councillor Ali, Councillor Khan. We were on the phone continuously to members who are partners, police, officers behind the scenes were working really hard to ensure nothing happened. So a lot of hard work goes into it. But one of the things that we recognise in Burnley is actually we never take our foot off the gas, and we, continuously working hard to bring our communities together, and that's absolutely vital. And we'll continue to do that. But I would like to, thank all those not who are involved just now in work of building bridges, but actually who set the foundations 22 years ago, who set that organisation up, because that helped us to overcome the challenges that we've had. So I thank Councillor Kelly for that observation. Councillor McGowan, I hate to say this, but you should feel vindicated, because we in this chamber previously passed a resolution to say that we would support that, because I'd sat in on meetings with senior members of the Labour Party, prior to becoming an independent, and I'd seen that actually Labour didn't have a plan. And I actually saw County Councillor Phillipson, and I said to her, I congratulated him, actually you had a plan. And the most disappointing thing out of all this, and I'm sure colleagues from the Labour group will actually back this, the disappointing thing is that the senior members of the Labour Party didn't even bother to consult or speak to Labour leaders across Lancashire, which I think is really poor. And then to make that announcement have the decision made behind closed doors, and then to make that announcement without any consultation or a heads up, I think, we all know how we felt about that. With regards to, there is that goodwill. One of the glimmers of hope that we do have is that there will be a move towards a mayoral authority of some kind. But already what I'm picking up from certain county members, Lancashire leaders, is that actually some of them are not willing to do that. They don't want to go towards a mayoral. So already that split is forming. And then one of the things that I was keen on was actually ensuring that we don't get local government reorganisation. As we said in this chamber, one of the things that we all agree on is that we don't want to go into a East Lancashire unitary with Blackburn or being run from Blackburn. I wrote to, following the announcement from government, I wrote to all of the Lancashire leaders and asked them if they would sign a letter along with myself, writing to government to say that we would not want to local government reorganisation in Lancashire, and particularly that we would not want to go with Blackburn. I've not had a single response from unfortunately, from any of my Labour colleagues. The only ones who have responded are two colleagues who are Conservative leaders, to say that they don't want that in their authorities as well. In terms of, to answer the question around flood defences from Councillor Lewis, absolutely right. It is great news for the borough. It's great news for the residents of Padiham. And I think, and I mentioned this before, but I think the intervention that we made when we accidentally found out that, the funding was not in place, actually getting together, and we put politics to the side upstairs in the committee rooms and sat down with the Environment Agency and we wrote to them. And it was a collective effort. Every single person, every single member, particularly the ward councillors, played a key role in that. So I think, that's something that, again, should be celebrated for collaboration and working together. And then finally, just on the point that Councillor Townsend made about the GCSEs and the gap between places like Burnley and Ribble Valley and South Ribble. And I think it's there for everybody to see, is the fact that what's the difference? And it's deprivation and disadvantage. We need to recognise that. And the thing is, we need that. That's why any funding that comes from government shouldn't be that, well, actually, it goes to all boroughs across Lancashire. It needs to go to the areas that need it most. Education, our children, why are they falling behind? Why should a child, say, for example, and I just use this as an example, why should a child who goes to Cliviger have a better outcome than a child who goes to school in, say, the West End of Burnley? Where you are born, the postcode, your postcode, or what your parents do for a living should not dictate how well or what school you go. And I think the challenge is, and I know that there are colleagues here who are governors at our schools. I'm proud of our local schools. And first thing we need to do is encourage all of our members and the people that we know to send our children to our schools. But the starting points for our children, that's the issue. That's where the interventions like the early years funding, the work and support, working with families. To break this cycle, you've got to work with the families. You've got to support the families, but there's got to be resource to come in to support those families. And we know that, and I know the Labour Party and Labour group members were very proud of the work that Short Start Centres did. We need that kind of, family hubs are a start, but actually what we need is Short Start Centres to start to build all that up again. So, as I said before, what we need to do is work together. We need to work together to lobby government to say we need funding for initiatives like this. We need to break that cycle. Until we break that cycle, we're not going to make the differences here for the outcomes for our young people and for our children. I hope that answers everybody's questions or observations. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Anwar. And bearing in mind it's nearly quarter past 9, can we take a vote to suspend standing orders so that we can finish this meeting? Sorry? Right, so I've moved it. Mr. Deputy Mayor, can you please second that?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Can we go to a vote, please? All those in favour? Thank you. Anyone against? Noted. Any abstentions? Okay. So that's been carried. And Deputy Leader and Executive Member for Resources and Performance Management, Councillor Margaret Lishman, would you please move your report?
I move the report, Mr. Mayor, and I will be brief, just to remind members regarding PL5 on page 832. We're having a climate change week in Burnley between the 7th and the 13th of October. Various events are listed in my report, and I hope that those that can will attend. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And any questions? Great. Any observations? No? Thank you. And thank you. And Community and Environmental Services, can Councillor Baker please move your report on page 834?
I move my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Brindle and then Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. PL1, page 836, under the heading Rowley Reservoir. Can the executive member advise if following an analytical test of the water flow in Rowley Reservoir in 2012, the opportunity to retest can be undertaken at the same time as the repair of the dam structure? Now, I ask this because the analytical test in 2012 did reveal that there were a number of rather concerning amounts in the water, including nickel, mercury, manganese, aluminium, lead, copper, zinc, cadmium and arsenic. But I must stress that they were within safety levels and very, very low. But given that there is so much public concern about contaminated water, it may be worthwhile considering doing the test again. And I have a copy of the report here, if anybody would like to see it. Could that be considered by the executive member, please?
Thank you. Would you like, can you take another question, Councillor Baker? Yeah, Councillor Lewis?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think it's that tricky. And I do apologise I didn't bring this one to you before. I've only sort of really sort of thought of it this evening, so I do apologise. Oh, sorry, I do apologise. 834 PL1. Out with a fabulous group of litter pickers in Padiham at the weekend, and it did mention to me about the potential lack of litter bins around. that's causing a further problem. And I hadn't really necessarily thought about it, but I always thought there was litter bins by bus stops at the very least. But then I looked around and realised there's quite a lot of bus stops that don't have litter bins by them. So I just wondered if there's any potential for expansion of the litter bin facilities across the borough. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
I'll go with the litter bins first, because I can come back to Margaret and the Councillor Brindle in a minute or two. I'll look into that again. The cost of putting a litter bin on is relatively cheap. It's unfortunately the cost of repeated entry. So obviously we have a contract that says how many litter bins they will collect from, etc. But I will ask the word whether we can perhaps, it's coming to the end of the contract as well, so it could possibly be in the next contract to add a few more, etc. But I'll check into that in further detail. Councillor Brindle, thank you for that. I did actually look at it last time you mentioned it. I didn't get very far, if I'm honest about it, but I did look into it. Nobody could find a copy of the report, but never mind. The Rowley Reservoir is a misnomer, if anything. And this seems to be caught up in government legislation about reservoirs. And because of the reservoir, a few years ago now, about 5 or 6 years ago, was it, over Christmas, one collapsed somewhere. So they brought out all these things about inspections on reservoirs and safety things. But it's nothing to do with the water in them. It's peculiarly the height of the reservoir and all the other bits and pieces. So we've had to jump through hoops to get through that. So when I asked the question about the test, that was nothing to do with us at all as a council, I believe. I'll check it again further after this, but the answer I got at that point was that's not within our remit, because this reservoir bit here is just a purely physical thing that we have to do. But I'll ask the question again about the thing, about whether it's still contaminated and what levels, whether we looked at it again and whether we can afford to have it done as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any observations? Councillor Butt? Oh, yes, sorry, I do apologise. Yeah, Councillor Barton with a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is PL1, page 836. What's an area roadshow, and are ward councillors invited to actively participate in the process? It reads like this is something that I should know about, and I'm afraid I don't.
No, that's it.
Brilliant. Right, thank you, Councillor Barton. You were invited, because I asked about that as well, because I missed the one in Clividge and said what that's about. It's communicating with the public even more, sort of thing. There are operating. There's another one coming up. I think it's about back end of October in Dane's House area.
On the 18th.
Sorry?
Yes, on the 18th.
Of October?
Yes.
And you're perfectly welcome to come to that and support us.
On
that
Abel
one.
Street.
Oh, it'd be during the day though, Councillor. They're all during the day, unfortunately. They cope with the majority of the people. They don't work for councillors, don't all these people have decided. But no, but you're quite welcome to attend, and any other councillor. Please come and show your support, because certainly the officers appreciate it when councillors turned up and help it. And we don't support them enough, and I'm making every effort to get there, especially now you've told me the date again. I'll write it back in the diary tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. I think you get, these road shows, you do get invited. So councillors at Clividge and would have been invited to their road show, similar to when they arrange it at your end as well. Okay. Right, what am I doing? I'm not here to answer questions. Right, observations. Any observations? Yeah, Councillor Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just a quick one, and it is, I've lost it now. PL1, page 835, enforcement action figures. Could you just please pass on thanks to Street Scene and the cleansing crews? A year ago in Trinity, I was reporting between 50 and 65 incidents of fly tipping every single week. I'm now down to about 12 to 15 every week, and that has massively improved, certainly over the last 6 months. So thank you for that.
Councillor Lorna.
An observation. I report fly tipping on the Long Causeway and the Burnley side and the Coaldale side. I just want to congratulate Street Scene picking all the rubbish up in under 3 days. Coaldale, 8 weeks.
Would you like to respond, Councillor Baker?
I shall pass those comments on to the team. Mr.
Thank
Mayor.
you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And thank all members for taking care to tell me.
Thank you. Councillor Khan, will you please move your report on development and growth on page 838?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move my report. I am very aware of the time. I think the report is a very positive report. I wouldn't want to add much more. There's just one other point I would like to mention. On the 30th of September, it's Burnley Business Week. I'll be opening Burnley Business Week at 9 o'clock on Monday at Burnley College. I would welcome all of the members in this chamber to watch the podcasts, attend any seminars, any sessions. There's loads of exciting things happening, as you can see from this report. So I look forward to any questions and comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor McGowan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is PR2, page 839. Every time I've asked Councillor Khan a question, she has always come back to me afterwards. I appreciate it. Not to make her life difficult by asking this, just reading the report, can I just check that this is right, because it seems incredible to me. Since the last full council, which is a couple of weeks, there have been 440 mentions of Burnley in the press, which I can get on board with a total reach of 118 million people. 118 million. Can you just check if that's correct? Because it just seems grossly exaggerated. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Can I just answer that? I think it might be something called wishful thinking, but we can double check it. It might be just that it's been watched once and then checked again, but we'll double check it. Hopefully, anyway.
And Councillor Brindle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question was exactly the same about the 118 million. I didn't realise that the Burnley Express had such a vast catchment area, so I was just interested to see where that figure had come from. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a point of clarity, it's not just I think what it is various different platforms, so it's not just the one, it's not just Burnley Express, so it's probably various different platforms. But I wanted to say then, when Margaret, I thought, should I just say it's hard? Yes, of course, that's right. Let me check and find out. I think it might be a mistake.
Yeah, thank you. I think it adds to all our social media pages, every one of us who mentions Burnley. So please keep on mentioning it. I know Don does, and Alan, you need to get on it. And any observations? Oh, sorry, I do apologise, Councillor Townsend. Question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's PR3, page 840. Now, it mentions two of the levelling up projects, Town to Turp and Newtown Mill, that are either completed or very near to completion, which is great news. But as we all know, there were 3 levelling up projects, and the one at the train station isn't mentioned at all. So I'm not sure where that project is up to at all, but I would like to know, when is it likely to get started? And if it doesn't get started soon, are we could we actually lose the funding? Because I know that these levelling up projects were all time bound in terms of they had to be delivered, they had to be shovel ready and delivered within a certain period. Now, this should have been delivered long ago. Why disabled people have never been able to get from one platform to another is another thing. But if you could just please let us know where we're up to with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Thanks for your kind remarks about them 2 projects. They are indeed part of a long-term amount of ongoing work. So yeah, they are something to be very happy about. The third and final one that you're talking about, I think it was mentioned that the costs had gone up, and that's where the delays come in. But rather than give misinformation or inaccurate information, am I okay to send you an email with the full details on what happened there? Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Any observations? Councillor McGowan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just in response to what Councillor Townsend was saying. I can find the page number if required, But as an observation, I also was very concerned about the bridge over Manchester Road train station. I think it should be easy to build a bridge over a rail platform. I think originally it was quoted at £4 million, but just ask yourself this question. If somebody give you £8 million tomorrow and said, build yourself a house with it, what would the house look like that you could build with £8 million? That is what we're now talking about, the bridge costing, which I think is an absolute joke. And I just think maybe that is the reason, which you probably already know, Councillor Townsend. You raised the point, which is right to raise, but you probably already know this. That is the reason why there is no bridge, because it's gone to an extortionate figure, and who can justify spending £8 million on a bridge? I want to see it though, and I'll put that on record. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Very good point. Any other observations? We're on observations, yeah? Yeah. Councillor Lewis?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Page 8, is that 42? 842, which is PR3. Just on Padiham Town Centre, I think my ward colleague brought this up at the last council meeting, that there's obviously a number of fantastic events that go on in Padiham. The town centre officer is obviously involved with that, but there's a lot of work that goes on by Padiham Town Council and the really hard-working volunteers that work a lot harder than I do on Padiham Town Council, to be fair to them, and who put a lot of work into those events, like the Christmas light switch on and the duck race. So I'd just like to acknowledge that.
Thank you. Do you want to respond to those observations?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor McGowan. Yes, that was my understanding as well when I said the costs went up. I was just very mindful of the time, and I didn't know if I could explain it in the way that would be satisfactory. I thought in writing it's probably better. But yeah, basically that was the top and bottom of it. It's not something that was in this council's control, is what I was trying to get at. But again, I will put that on an email. Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Thank you so much for your comment. I think last time I said the same, and I hope this time I don't miss anybody out, because my esteemed colleague, Councillor Harbour, did help me a little bit last time by remembering the volunteers as well. So yeah, well done. I have to say, in this chamber, it does come up quite a bit that, you know, on different portfolios we're talking, and people are always saying Padiham, Hapton, Padiham, Hapton. We're in a meeting here at Full Council. I want it to be on record that it is always in the forefront of my mind that we're all part of one and the same. And there are things, some things are embargoed, some things we can't speak about, but when we can, you hopefully will come to know that it's one and the same, we're all part of one. And so Padiham is at the forefront, Hapton as well, and hopefully you'll hear some good news about it. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Councillor Lorna, can you please move your report on housing, health and culture on page 846?
I move my report, and I'll give you a brief update. Townley Hall is on schedule. There's been a positive summer of events in the parks and obviously the Canal Festival. All our green flags have been retained, 8,000 trees planted. And just so you all know, the tickets for Townley fireworks are on sale on the 1st of October. One thing that we are looking into, where I've received complaints and concern, is regarding the weeding around certain areas. And Simon is having a meeting with LCC in October to discuss more budget. Housing. The damp and mould officer is in post. That's very good news. Sometimes I miss events that I'd like to go to, for example, the Calico one. But I was actually at a health event, and I came across some anti-mould paint, which is quite revolutionary, and I'm going to introduce that to Calico, and they're going to maybe have a trial of one house with that. Another thing that I'm really happy with is the empty homes programme and the temporary accommodation, and the targets are going up. We've got 18 and we're looking to do more. This is fantastic news, but also we've got to keep our eye on who is going in these empty homes and the care pathways around it. And I'm also having conversations with investors in the healthcare market to look at care pathways so that people don't get stuck in temporary accommodation, leaving other people in travel lodges and homeless. That links into health, of course, which is why housing and health are now linked in my portfolio. I'm a big believer in social prescribing. A&E is full. We want to reduce those waiting lists, and we need to diversify our social prescribing. I have a meeting regarding this and 3 or 4 new ideas to put forward, such as the frailty idea that is now happening as a pilot within the NHS. So ideas for this executive are coming, they're coming and they're being discussed and coming into fruition. Finally, culture. The Culture Awards are fantastic. It's great to see you're celebrating Burnley culture. And congratulations to all the winners. I had a fantastic evening and enjoyed presenting an award, although I did walk to the wrong stage. I would also like to congratulate Lily Fontaine from English Teacher. Probably many of you have never heard of the band, but she grew up in Lancashire and wrote songs about Colne and has just won the Mercury Prize, but didn't claim to be from Colne, claimed to be from Leeds. I'm going to a meeting on the 3rd of October to address this kind of issue. I have a county-wide music policy on finding stars of the future like Lucy Fontaine. So we should write to Pendle Council and tell them there are songs about Colne and they should have blue packs. So there, I move my report, and any questions?
Thank you. I've got Councillor Steele. I'm going to go from this side. I've got Councillor Steele, Councillor McGowan, and Councillor Whitaker, and then Councillor Hurt. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm on page 851 PE2. I think with a number of us, we really welcome the upgrades and programmes of works that have taken place in the St Peter Centre and Padiham Leisure Centre, specifically around the fitness suite, gym area and locker areas. Obviously, you can't understate the importance of physical health, which leads into good mental health as well. Obviously, you don't build an elite body without visiting these types of facilities, and I can be a testament to that. But I have been approached by a number of elderly residents who have expressed quite a large amount of frustration with the intermittent lift facilities at Padiham Leisure Centre. So I would like to ask the executive member what the plans are to address this and potentially upgrade it. And also, following on from that, have we got some oppressive maintenance contracts in place that maybe for emergency call-out, it costs a lot of money to actually get the people to come out and fix it? Or are we just being lazy about it? So on behalf of a number of residents who are expressing their frustration on this and clearly want to be in peak physical health like myself, just want to understand exactly where we're at. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Yeah, sure.
I have spoken to the team, and someone has been out today to look at the lift, and they're doing a diagnostic on it, which I wouldn't know where to start, but they are doing that. And we should have an answer by next week on what is wrong with it. And what I want to do is now put this as an agenda item on the Burnley Leisure Trust meeting that I chair. So I will do that. And if you can remind me, that would be great.
Thank you. Councillor McGowan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is PL4, page 848. The aim of the game is to improve all play areas for all ages. And it's in this vein, you know, I'm pushing to have some sort of digging equipment put in the sandpit for toddlers. I'm really, at the Apton Recreation Ground, which I raised previously, really pleased to see the 2 ball courts on the Apton record to undergo a full refurb, though. It's much appreciated. I want to put that on record. Can the exec member please keep me in the loop regarding the briefing being put together to undertake designs to improve the Fennyfold playing fields? I really do want to be close to what happens there, because I don't want it to slip any further down the line, and also best value for money. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. You want to take a few more? Yeah. And Councillor Whitaker and then Councillor Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's PL3, page 848. Councillor Lorne has already referred to the empty homes programme. First off, there's a number of empty homes in Whitfield and Art Hill, one of which is on Crowwood Avenue, which is just to completion. It's been renovated by the council to an amazing standard. There's another one that's part way through its renovation on Bramley Avenue, which again is looking absolutely fantastic. But there is one other property, possibly two properties in Whitfield and Ironhill. He is already aware of one of them on Whittaker Close. I'm just wondering if you can give me an update on where we are with that, with any kind of compulsory purchase order, etc. I know it's gone before the executive for that, and they are going to be doing that. But there is one other that I've become aware of on Wellfield Drive. Now, this property was subject basically to a magistrate's court order. It had a court order placed on it, a closure one, back in December 2023. Now, the magistrate at the time actually said that the premises were closed. It couldn't be reopened until March 2024. Since then, that house is still sat there empty. It's looking overgrown. It's looking completely neglected. I'm just wondering if you could possibly have a look at that with your team and then update us on that. But the main one at this moment in time would be Whittaker Close. If you could update me on that, please.
Yeah, right, so them two, yeah, no worries.
Whittaker Close is being purchased at this time, and it hopefully will be completed as soon as possible. The target is for summer next year for it to be a family home, be resold, and the money goes back into the Empty Homes project. Councillor McGowan, of course, I will keep you up to date.
Right, okay, there was Councillor McGowan's question. Yeah, okay, and Councillor Hurt and then Councillor Birtwistle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This won't come as any surprise to Councillor Lorna. I would like the executive to strongly reconsider the removal of Jessie's Park, also known as Baker Street Park, and moving it to Piccadilly Park. There are multiple reasons why. Part of it is due to the antisocial behaviour issues on Piccadilly Park, drug taking, drug dealing, alcohol issues, etc. Jessie's Park is overlooked by multiple residents who keep an eye on it. It's a well-loved park, it's a well-used park. And I also have to say that although the accessibility to and from Jessie's Park isn't ideal, it is multiple times better than the accessibility to Piccadilly Park. There is no accessible route at all to Piccadilly Park. There are no plans to make any accessible routes to Piccadilly Park, and nor are there any accessible routes to any other play area in the town. I've tried all the routes myself. There is no way to get there without using the road, including cobbled streets. So I would ask the executive to strongly reconsider the removal of that play area. Please try and find the funding to keep it. There is a consultation event on Friday afternoon that I hope that a lot of residents will attend. But I have to say, I will be there supporting those residents in protesting against any removal of this park. Thank you.
Do you want to take Councillor Birtwhistle's question? Yeah, Councillor Birtwistle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's page 853 PE4. I'm very interested in the future of adult social care as my national party is, and I'm interested to read, and I'll read a little bit of it, to fast track into the older person's rapid assessment unit based in the specialist frailty area. It's been along at Royal Blackburn Teaching Hospital by GP referrals. I'm extremely interested in this because adult social care is a disaster at the moment. Would it be possible that the council could hold a meeting about this for all members so that this can be explained to us how this will help adult social care to be delivered in Burnley and in Lancashire, because the adult social care at the moment is a nightmare. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Do you want to take another one from Councillor Kelly? I think it'll be a similar question.
Okay. Yeah, it is. Page 853, Burnley Together, PE4. I mean, obviously, the idea of having this, for fast-tracking elderly people into a specialist area at Blackburn Teaching Hospital via a GP referral, which, you know, if you can get one of those, you're doing pretty well to start with. I spent actually unfortunately, about 10 hours in A&E with my grandson on Saturday night. And there were old people. Whatever you see on television, it's as bad, if not worse. It was absolutely horrific in there. The corridors are full of people on trolleys. Most of them, or the vast majority of them, very elderly people. They've got to the stage now where the corridors are named and numbered. And it's corridor A, bed number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You go on to the next one, it's corridor B, 1, 2, 3. And people are lining the walls. And very many of those were very old people. Unfortunately, it was a Saturday night when I was there. So do you know if this is only happening Monday to Friday? So that if you happen to be old and poorly on a Saturday or a Sunday, it's just tough luck.
Thank you. Councillor Lorna, do you want to answer those?
Very happy to arrange a briefing about the frailty, because the NHS and I chatted with them and they were very, very for this project. And anything we can do it takes the burden off A&E. It's fantastic. It will never be perfect. Councillor Birtwistle, I've got Professor Martin Green, who's head of adult social care, on a Teams call with Burnley Council. He's just so I'm going to take advice from him and try and plan for the future of Burnley. So
Can we all speak to him?
I'll speak to him first, and then you can ask. Well, you can ask me questions to ask him. I can't have 45 people on the call, can I? So, yeah, he will be here. He's going to come here. Councillor Hurt, your concerns, I take them on board. I think more than the accessibility argument alone worries me, but it's what that park stands for. It's a beacon of hope. It's in the worst area, one of the worst areas of deprivation in our town, and to get rid of it is quite controversial, and I think as the executive we can speak. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Townsend. Or Councillor Harbour.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's page 848 PL3, and it's regarding the Piccadilly Road scheme. Colleagues might be aware that when this scheme was first envisaged, we talked about the properties along Piccadilly Road there, the facelifting programme, but we also said as well about what was important on there was the shops themselves, because they're in a sorry state, and we also included the green areas around there, because in my opinion it's no good refurbishing properties if you leave the green areas in a mess. And at the moment those green, the scheme's not complete at all at the moment. The facelifting's been done on the properties and they look brilliant, but the actual quality of maintenance around the green areas, in my opinion, is not up to scratch. And again, the shops themselves, now I know there's talks going on with the owners, but I think that scheme took over 12 months, 18 months to implement. So you'd have thought that by now the shop owners would have got their act together and worked in partnership with the council and all been done at the same time. It's not done, and I just ask the member just to keep an eye on that, make sure the shops are refurbished, the fronts, and again, more importantly, make sure that green spaces are maintained properly over the next few years, because to do one without the other, in my opinion, is just a waste. My second question as well is just going on what Councillor McGowan touched on PL4 849. Councillor McGowan alluded to that a brief is being prepared for improvements, and I think we're talking about consultants as well, which you'll be pleased to hear. But again, this brief, what's being prepared, it talks about there about consultants to undertake designs and costings for improvements, which is great. But what improvements are we actually talking about? Are we talking about the changing facilities? Are we talking about the car park? Are we talking about the pictures and the state of the pictures? Or hopefully, we might be even talking about a 3G pitch on there. There's no detail on that. So if you could Well, if you know any details on it, great, but if not, if you could come back to with details for all of us to find out just what's being consulted on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oh, sorry.
Councillor Harbour, I think it's a good idea if we all meet ward councillors and Simon, then we'll get a brief on this, because I don't have any other information. And in terms of Trinity, I agree with you. I think we have to do all of it. We do have a lot of fly tipping problems down there, and people just not being respectful to the green spaces. So again, an education programme and knocking on doors is probably all we can do.
On this side, is it Councillor Barton? Yeah, Councillor Barton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is page 849 PL4. I think it's really important that the equipment we invest in and resources we invest in actually are fit for purpose. So there are 2 points here. The works to improve Lockyer Avenue sports pitches sound like they haven't been as fully completed as possible because of restrictions by United Utilities. How confident are we that those playing pitches aren't going to be subject to flooding in the future as a result of that issue? And secondly, the LTA tennis functionality that's been installed at Ightenhill Park, this reads as though it doesn't work. Can you give me a bit more context as to why it doesn't work and whose fault that might be? Thank you.
I can't tell you whose fault it is, but what I can say is that tennis is free in Ightenhill for the next 12 months. So if you fancy getting your racket out, that's great. So we are going to fix that within the next 12 months. And I'd like to add that Burnley Tennis Club are doing a fantastic job and the under-16s are unbeaten. The other bit of your question, sorry, I've just forgotten that. Oh, it's only 85% complete. The drainage is underway. Obviously, we are getting paddy and flood defences and we cannot see what might happen with the weather, but Simon is confident that there will be an improvement and they won't flood as much. But of course, as with all outside football, at the moment, for months of the winter, we often lack pitches and we need 3G pitches. So hence, making sure I speak to Councillor Harbour and McGowan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hosker.
Jack, I don't talk to you much, so I will keep it brief. As you know me, I'm not one for going on, but there's issues what do you want to address. And I'll tell you for what, there's 4 issues. One is 2 years ago, I asked about the Padiham bowling green, about it being modernised. It's not fit for purpose. It used to be in a good way, Padiham bowling green at one time. It wants refurbished. It doesn't help that kids keep going up and down and riding the bikes across it, bad not help. And what I suggested to Simon Garth, and what I will suggest to you, is maybe it might be a good idea at night time when it's walked up to put a gate on. Trespassers will be prosecuted, maybe an idea. The other thing is, the bowling green next to Paddy and Bass isn't being used. Maybe that piece of land there, maybe can put to be better use, maybe even that could be considered for a pitch, football pitch of some kind, a 3D pitch. A consideration, it's a bowling green that's not being used, Jack. It's only a suggestion what I'm putting to you. The other issues that concern is, like I mentioned in this meeting earlier on, when I went for what Mr. What's his name again? Our chief exec. Right, is we went round, we had a walk round, I pointed out to Mr. Luckman and Simon Goth, as you know, on the book area, it's all flooding, all embankments caving in. Parks are aware of it, they know it wants money investing. One issue, that's down the Black Path. Now, the other one is Acton Rec. Now, you wouldn't have thought so, but the Labour Council at one time put in for funding for £50,000. And they got it, I don't know where you got it from, but some funding, Mark will know what I'm on about, for £50,000. And it had a pitch put on. But where that pitch is now, water's running up, it's going down into allotments, allotments up. Now, I went up, and I've had engineers there, and you came up, Mr. Luckman, yourself, and you can see, but it wants a drainage system put in. There's a garden that used to be up there, knew where water was coming from, but now it's been sacked, so you won't be able to get no information off him. But maybe, Jack, we could have this addressed and looked into. Because the only thing I'm being told every time I ask, yeah, we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and nothing happens.
Thank you, Councillor Oscar.
I have got a meeting booked in with Luckman and we will discuss all of the issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any observations? Councillor Lewis. Councillor Birtwistle and then Councillor Kelly.
First of all, I apologise for dragging the meeting on longer. I've spoken on more things than I normally do this evening. There seems to be a lot in this agenda that I'm interested in. So, first of all, page 847, and that is PL2. Private rented disrepair, it goes over to 848 as well. I've had experience recently with dealing with a fair few issues in private rented disrepair, and council officers are working really, really hard in relation to that, and you've got to praise them for it. What I've found so disheartening is the lack of power that council officers have in a lot of situations, that things have to get to an absolute extreme before they can really do anything legally to enforce any action. For example, in a category 1 hazard in terms of mould, a room has to be covered by 75% mould to count as a category 1 hazard. 75%. So that to me, it just seems like that is such an extreme that, and so if it's anything less than 75%, just tell the landlord, oh, can you try and clean that up, please? And keep persisting at that. And that's about it. They can't say, right, no, any further legal enforcement action beyond that. And they can't say, oh, let's get the tenant out, get them into a safer home, because it's less than 75% of one room. It has to be one room as well. So if you've got big walls of mould here, there, and everywhere, all around the house, doesn't matter. 75% in one room. So that was shocking to me when I came across that, and I don't know what. Obviously, nothing can be done about it at council level. I do know it's legislation, but it was just shocking, and I praise the officers for the work that they already do. And on a lighter note, PE 2850, the Burnley Cultural Awards. It was great to attend as a member of the Leisure Trust with Councillor Hurt and Councillor Lorna there as well. Several council officers. It was a great event, and I think it celebrated that that Burnley has got going for it. That's good. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And Councillor Birtwistle and Councillor Kelly. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Page 853, relating to PE 4. I'm delighted that the executive member is meeting this professor who's head of social services and adult social care at Preston. I would love to meet, well, that's fine. Would love to meet this guy, as I'm sure everybody in this council chamber would love to him, because we are all concerned about adult social care. Bed blocking at the hospital with elderly people in the hospital, all sorts of major issues about adult social care. So could I invite our executive member to invite this professor to come and visit us in Burnley and explain to us what he's doing about it, so that we can be confident that adult social care in the future fulfills its need for the people that we represent, the elderly people who we represent. So could I request our exec member to invite him to come and speak to us? Because at the end of the day, we do pay his wage. So let's get him over here and let him explain to us what the bloody hell is, oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor, what is going on. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Councillor Kelly.
Yeah.
He's one of my trustees.
Oh, God. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just wanting to make a comment, page 851, PE2, about the visits to St Peter's Centre and to Padiham. Unfortunately, I didn't get to the Padiham one. I went to the St Peter's trip round, and I was the only person who was there. So I got a guided tour by two of the, by Scott Bryce and Paul Foster. And I was the only person there. I got taken. What came across, although the facilities were fantastic and it was so good, was their enthusiasm for what they were doing. They were really proud to show everybody, and really pleased to show the improvements that have been done there. I don't know whether other people went on one of the other days or not. One or two people are nodding. Yeah, and, well, it was at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, we're still at work.
Yeah, but I say, no, it was at 5 o'clock, and I think the other one was later actually. So people, but I would like to pass on my thanks to them, partly because I got a special guided tour on my own, but the fact that they were so enthusiastic about what they'd done, you know, it deserves commendation.
Thank you. Councillor Lorna, do you want to respond to those? Sorry, I've got Councillor Hurt who wants to make a quick observation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't going to say anything on this because I was going to make an escape and I can't get through yet. But I just want to echo the sentiments regarding St Peter's Centre and Padiham Leisure Centre, but also Townley Golf Club and Prairie Sports Village. I've had one-to-one tours of all of those so far, and the mechanics is next as part of being on a trustee of Burnley Leisure and Culture. And one thing, something that comes through very clearly is the professionalism and the enthusiasm and the dedication of all of the staff and the team within those venues. In Burnley, we've got some first-class sporting facilities with features and equipment that you don't see outside of big cities. And I think that Burnley has to be commended for actually managing to get that and keep them open through COVID. Thank you.
Councillor Lewis, maybe we can get a trial for the anti-mould paint with the case that you're talking about. I think they would do it. And the legislation, I can't do anything about, but I'll email you out of the council. Thanks for your other comments. Thank you again. And Councillor Birtwistle, I think we'll pick it up offline, and you have a special interest in this subject, so we can talk. Councillor Hurt, thank you for your observation. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Please buy your tickets for the Mayor's Ball. We're raising money for Pendleside Hospice, so contribute. This concludes the business of the business. Thank you very much.